All right, since we have everybody here, I'm going to go ahead and call to order the Thursday, February 11th, 2021 meeting of the Royal Oak Zoning Board of Appeals. The board does not write the zoning ordinance, but does have the authority to grant relief from it where practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship would result. The board will vote on each agenda item following a public hearing. Use variance requests require a minimum of 6 affirmative votes in order to grant the requested variances. Non-use variance requests require a minimum of 5 affirmative votes in order to grant the variances. If you'd like to request that the board table or adjourn your case due to the absence of a full board, you must inform the chairperson immediately following the public hearing. Petitioners shall do their best to limit their presentations to 10 minutes. Each participant in the public hearing shall do their best to limit their comments to 3 minutes. And with that, I will do the roll call vote. Mr. Opak?
I'm here.
Ms. Robinson?
I'm in Royal Oak too.
Oh, yes. Ms. Robinson?
Here, Ed in Royal Oak.
Ms. Zukin?
Here in Royal Oak.
Mr. Moore?
Here in Royal Oak.
Mr. Gavin?
Here from Royal Oak.
Mr. Klatt?
Here, and I'm actually near Frankenmuth today.
Ms. George?
Here in Royal Oak.
And I am also here present in Royal Oak. So that moves us right along to the approval of the minutes for the January 14th meeting. Moved by Ms. Zukin.
Second.
Second by Mr. Gavin. Corrections, additions, deletions?
No.
Not seeing any. I will call for the roll call vote. I vote yes. Ms. George?
Yes.
Mr. Klatt?
Yes.
Mr. Gavin?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Zukin?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
And finally, Mr. Opak.
Yes.
All right. So that moves us along to unfinished business. Mr. Murphy, any unfinished business that we need to deal with? All right. Not seeing any. That moves us along to our first item of new business, E1, case number 210205, an administrative review request. Appeal requesting that the Zoning Board of Appeals overturn the zoning administrator's determination that the surface parking lot, parcel ID 25-16-44-018, along North Center relates to the site plan and special land use for 224 North Washington Avenue. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. I'm going to switch over to a shared screen. If you don't see that, let me know. So you should see in front of you an aerial photograph. Okay. A reminder that the site in question is the parking lot as it relates to the approved site plan and special land use for the commercial use at 224 South Washington. So I'll hover over the parking lot, and this is the site in question. That in 1974, the Zoning Board of Appeals granted a special exception to permit this property to be utilized as an accessory parking lot for the commercial use across the alley, which was for a very, very, very long time Borgo Sisters School of Dance. In 2000, there were a very large number of properties surrounding the downtown that were rezoned to one-family residential. Obviously, many of the properties that were included in that rezoning were not one family at the time. And so there was what we refer to as an overlay district that was created, and it granted existing two-family, multifamily, and several commercial uses. It granted them special land use status. And that special land use status conveyed conformance to identified uses, setbacks, parking, density, and other provisions were in the zoning ordinance. And the private property owners didn't request a rezoning or the special land use designation. It was an action taken by the city commission. Property owners at the time were given notice to voice any concerns or objections. The current zoning ordinance language states that the review and approval of special land use applications was deemed to have been made and granted as part of the enactment of that overlay district. Therefore, the adoption of the zoning ordinance amendments granted this entire site, which again is the parking lot as well as the commercial use on the opposite side of the alley, it granted its special land use status. And in May of 2020, the accessory parking lot was sold to the current owner, who in turn submitted to the city an application for a land division application to remove the parking lot and to divide the parking lot into two separate buildable single-family home sites. And our office denied the land division application from the petitioner because we hold that this parking lot is associated with the approved site plan and special land use status for the entire site, which is not only the parking lot, but also the site with the building on it, the former Borgo Sisters School of Dance. And that the ownership, again, the property has changed hands. There are different owners of each separate piece of property, that the ownership doesn't negate the approved site plan or special land use status for the entire site. The petitioner is here seeking an appeal of our determination. So the board is being asked to overturn our determination. And if that occurs, the building at 224 North Washington, and again, I'll hover over it on the aerial photographs here, where it's the portion of the property, portion of the site that is west of the public alley, that site will still retain its special land use designation as a commercial property. And it would continue to convey conformance to a variety of zoning ordinance provisions. So that building and that site would be able to be reoccupied by another similar commercial use without any formal review from the Planning Commission or the Zoning Board of Appeals. The special land use status would remain until the property owner of the site with the building on it, until they request to either demo the site or to do something different. You may recall, a little bit of confusion, you may recall several months ago, the owner of the site with the building on it did come in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals to obtain necessary variances to convert that building and slightly expand it, to convert it to a single family home. The petitioner has not acted upon that approval. They have not submitted anything to our office to obtain a building permit and convert that structure to a single family home. So it still is allowed to be a commercial use under its approved site plan and special land use status. We did not receive any written public comments about this case, and we did not receive any audio comments either. To overturn our office's determination, it does require a majority of the board. A reminder that the board is down a member, so the board is comprised of 8 members, and it requires a majority, which is 5. And because the board is short a member, there is a vacancy. The petitioner does have the ability after engaging in conversation with the board, the petitioner does have the opportunity to postpone, if they so choose, postpone to the future when there may be 9 members present. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board might have and go through some of the photographs as the board has a conversation with the petitioner as well.
Mr. Ofek.
Mr. Murphy, had the house on had the owner for the Borgo property on Washington started converting this over to a residence, would this then be before us for splitting, or because in your eyes the use would have changed, or is that non-play?
Yes, if I'm gonna share my screen again. If the owner of the site with the building on it, the portion of the site with the building on it, this is the view from Washington. The property owner came in and obtain necessary variances to convert the vacant building into a single-family residence, which the board did grant the variance requests. If they come into the community development office and submit permits to convert it, to act upon that variance request and to convert it into a single-family home, that would negate their approved site plan and special land use status. They would essentially, it would be revoked, and they would be moving forward with a conforming use, which is a single-family home. And that would, we'll say, free up, or because there is no more commercial use on the site, there's no need for an accessory parking lot. And the petitioner who owned the two pieces of property, excuse me, the parking lot, the petitioner who owns the parking lot would no longer be associated with an approved site plan for the building on Washington. The property owner of the parking lot would be able to administratively obtain a land division application so that they could move forward to build 2 new single-family homes as well.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Mr. Moore?
So with the owner of the actual building, if they decide not to act upon the variance requests that they were granted, they could in turn still potentially lease this building out as a commercial building. That's what I'm understanding. And then it would be a commercial building without adequate parking if we allowed this request to go through tonight. Is that correct?
Well, if you allow the variance request to go through, meaning you overturn our decision that this parking lot is not associated with the commercial use on Washington, if you overturn the decision, the special land use status for the portion on Washington, that still applies. It would be minus whatever parking was at the site, since that parking lot is now gone. So that site would still maintain its approved site plan and special land use status. It would simply be a reduction in the number of parking spaces available to be used, because the associated parking lot would be 2 new single-family homes now.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Ms. Zukin?
So are you saying, Mr. Murphy, that if they decide to keep it as a commercial building, even though they don't own the parking anymore, that the parking lot would have to be available for their use?
Well, we hold that in 1974, the zoning board of appeals, the property owner at the time approached the zoning board of appeals and wanted to add more parking to their facility. So I'm going to share my screen again. So they came to the zoning board of appeals and they asked to use this site which fronts on Center. They asked to use it and create a parking lot associated with their business here. The zoning board of appeals granted them that approval because they recognized that they needed more parking. So they approached the zoning board of appeals to create a parking lot. They understood that they were short parking and that they wanted to expand their site to also include an accessory parking lot on the opposite side of the alley. So the building and the use expanded into the space across the alley to create a parking lot. The parking lot directly related to the business on Washington on the opposite side of the alley. By taking away the parking lot, and again, it's gone now, it's been removed, it eliminated required parking for the commercial use on Washington.
Well, Mr. Murphy, let me ask you the question a little bit differently. So the party that currently owns the Borgo building, if he theoretically decided that he just didn't want to do anything for the next 12, 24, 36, 48 months, the new owner of the parking lot, there's no way that he could legally compel the owner of Borgo's to move forward with any plan, and they would theoretically be hamstrung up until that time that the Borgo site took action.
They, excuse me, they have been, yes. They've been in that scenario, and we'll let the petitioner address some of the recent history. The property did change hands in May of 2020, so it's been a fair number of months, and they can express to us their relationship that they've had between each other.
Excellent. All right, not seeing any other questions, I will, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Zuka, go ahead.
Sorry, just one more. So also, are you saying that if the permit is granted to convert it or to start building it out as a single family residence, could you still administratively turn it back into commercial if he decided to switch it back?
Can you repeat the question?
Well, it says that,
I'll make sure I understand it.
yeah, under the findings, it says that administratively, they can reoccupy it as a commercial property if they apply to do that. If they apply for building permits for the single family usage, can they still get an administrative approval for commercial if they decide to switch back to commercial?
No. I'm going to share my screen again, so we're all on the same page in terms of what site we're discussing. You had referenced the conversation was with regard to the building on the portion of the property west of the alley.
Correct.
It does have a limited amount of parking. If the petitioner decides to move forward with their approved variance and renovate this structure to a single family home, by submitting for a building permit to convert it to a single family home, they revoke their special site plan and special land use status. They cannot convert it back to or in the future use it as in a commercial capacity, because its underlying zoning is one family residential. So the single family would be a conforming use. We couldn't then have, the petitioner couldn't then come back and make it a different commercial use without a use variance or rezoning in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gavin, and then Ms. Robinson.
So at what point, I guess I'm trying to understand too, with respect to this parking lot parcel, at what point would the special land use status of that go away? Like, would it be if we grant this request tonight, or would it be only after they've successfully completed a land division and have applied for building permits to build their single family homes for those two sites? So supposing the land division goes forward.
I would say the latter half of your comment, when they get an approval to, and they have it divided into two single family home sites, and they submit for permits, and they get the permits and move forward.
And that would only apply to the parking lot. The special land use status for the former dance studio building would still then exist, correct?
That's correct. It would simply be minus the number of parking spaces that was in the parking lot.
Ms. Robinson.
That in the paperwork that we have here, Exhibit C, where it talks about that May 20th letter, where it says that the person that owns the former dance studio is saying there's no future commercial use on this site and no future need for the parking lot adjacent to my lot. So this is this just like a technical thing that until that permit for a single family home is filed, that's what's holding everything up? Am I understanding this right?
In a sense, yes. Yes. If the individual that owns the site with the building on it comes in for permits to renovate the structure to a single-family home, they revoke their special land use status and their site plan approval. It cannot be a commercial use any longer. And it would not need an accessory parking lot. So that would essentially free up the petitioner to freely use the parking lot site for 2 new single-family home sites.
So what are we being asked to do tonight?
You're asked to either affirm, overturn, or modify in some capacity staff's determination that the approved site plan and special land use status for the entire site includes that parking lot. You can either say, yes, it does. Logical connection. In 1974, there are clear records that show that that parking lot was created as parking for the commercial use that fronts along Washington Avenue. You can affirm that statement, or you can overturn it and say that we don't believe that that accessory parking lot ever related to an approved site plan or approved special land use status, which was conveyed under an ordinance. You can disagree with staff that that parking lot was never associated with the commercial use on Washington.
Okay.
All right, not seeing any other hands, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the petitioner. Mr. Cowan, would you like the floor?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for your time tonight and your careful consideration of our request. I do want to clarify, and I will clarify some issues as I speak and make my presentation. But at the get-go, I want to make it very clear. We are challenging the decision based on the fact that it was used to deny the land division. We understand what the past history is of the property and the special land use that was granted through ordinance, as well as the request in 1974. We understand all that. But those were the basis to deny the land division, not on its merits, not on the fact that we didn't comply with some request for a land division, but it was denied because, in essence, what the planning division and the zoning administrator were saying is another party, not Hillian Homes, our client, but another party, and I'll call it Mr. Groth, because that's the gentleman who owns the entity that sold my client the property and now also retains ownership at 224 North Washington. Now we have to rely upon him to do something. And that is a highly unusual interpretation under any zoning code. And I, quite frankly, have never seen it in all the years I've been working here in Royal Oak and in other communities. So, but then to get back on track here with the presentation, I do want to mention that Patrick Ray, who is the founder and CEO president, is also on with me and would be available to answer questions. Mr. Ray, I think, has been before the board before, actually on land divisions. His company, Hillian Homes, has built about 350 homes in the city of Royal Oak in the past 12 years. They're very distinguishable. They have kind of that, what I'll call modified modern arts and crafts style. They build a variety of custom homes, but that's kind of the sweet spot that they have, and probably would be something that would fit very well in the neighborhood. And I want to make it very clear, our intent here of Hillian Homes is not in any way to game the system, to get an unfair advantage. They simply want to do what they do best, which is to get the land division and build 2 single-family homes on this particular site. I also want to state that we have nothing but respect for the zoning administrator, Doug Hedges, as well as all members of the planning commission or planning division, including Mr. Murphy. Sometimes they told me I'm wrong, and sometimes I've told them they're wrong. But what you're here for in your capacity under both state law and city ordinance is to be that check and balance on not only the administration of the code and its enforcement, but also upon interpretations. That's kind of a rare occurrence because normally you're dealing with dimensional or use variances as you are on all the other items tonight. But to get into the meat of our issue is, again, this decision was not based on something Hillian Homes did. It was based upon two items. It was either a new site plan had to be registered with and filed for a different use, for the residential use, or we had to have Mr. Groth, the owner of the 224 Washington site, ask for a parking variance so he didn't need the commercial lot anymore. So I want to comment on those two issues because I think it's very important. And I think the facts are very important here. Mr. Groth sold the commercial parking lot to Hillian Homes. At that juncture, it was evidently clear that he never intended and factually does not need that lot in order to move forward with his plans for the building. Now, I do want to clarify one thing, and this is my interpretation, and that is that if there was a switch and he decided to continue the commercial use, he still has to provide parking. He's just not able to use the lot that he sold because, as we stated in my letter, we have no intention of leasing it back to him or anything like that. There's no conspiracy or anything of that nature going on here. Hillian Homes builds homes, and that's what they want to do. It is certainly within Mr. Groth's right to purchase houses on either side or nearby and use that for parking if he decides he wants to keep that as a commercial commercial structure. But I will tell you that the overlay district that this property is in made it very clear that they wanted to move towards that. The district regulations were only a stopgap. The clear intent of the overlay district is to maintain the integrity and pursue additional single-family homes in the area, and that's exactly what we're doing. So while there is a site plan there somewhere in a file, it has factually been destroyed because the property's been sold, Hillian Homes has purchased it, and Mr. Groth has options if he wishes to get other parking if he wants to keep that as a commercial structure. I can't imagine the planning division would ever allow in a situation like this, given the overlay district, that you didn't need to provide any parking. They're going to need to provide parking if they do something other than a single family residence. Secondly, and I think this is very important, especially for those of you who remember your August, September meetings with the 9 variances that were requested for the building. At that time, and I watched the tape, and I know most of you recall it, both in the staff report and at the meeting, there was no mention about a connection between this building and the commercial parking lot. None at all. And there was no request by the planning division to require that Mr. Groth ask for a parking variance so that would forever foreclose him using the commercial lot. Well, it's very inconsistent and actually confusing to my client and I that now when we come to ask for a land division, we're told, no, you can't get it because Mr. Groth has to come back to the ZBA and get a parking variance. That doesn't make any common sense. It asks him to do something that he could have done last year and asks us to be responsible to somehow pressure him to come back before you. We don't believe that's called for in the overlay district or any ordinance in the city of Royal Oak. This is merely an interpretation. So you did grant those 9 variances, and I think it's very telling that Mr. Groth has not written you or he got notice of this meeting, and he has not written you, nor has he made any verbal communication that there is something amiss and he needs to retain some kind of control over the parking lot. He knows he can't. He sold it. He's put it in writing to you, and I attached it that he has no interest in that lot and is moving forward with his plans for the single-family home at that location. So again, we are not seeking, I could understand this interpretation if Hillian Homes was going to continue the commercial parking lot as some type of commercial concern. If, for instance, they wanted to put a building on there or some kind of commercial enterprise or rent it out for parking to some of the businesses on Main Street, because we know parking is at a premium, or something of that nature, I could understand that. That to me would be totally legitimate. But the fact that we're asking for a land division as the condition preceding to getting to build two-family homes, that doesn't make sense, and that is not, should, it cannot be a requirement of my client and a requirement established by the city. I would also again reiterate the overlay district, as I stated in my letter, the goals are totally to convert to single family, and this is exactly what the overlay district and its goals ask for. Take those, sparsely spread around commercial uses within the neighborhood and convert them into single family homes. That's exactly what we're doing. And I think it's important for you to understand it's just not Hillian Homes here as the applicant. The neighbors in that area, and if you can imagine this in your neighborhood, not on the periphery or on the edge, but right in the middle of your neighborhood is a commercial enterprise for over 50 years. Now, I took my two daughters to Borgo Sisters, and I miss it. The neighbors there were very gracious over the years, because I know there was issues when I was mayor. There were complaints about all the parking in the neighborhood and overflow and all that type of thing. But at the end of the day, everybody coexisted. But it certainly was a safety issue and a traffic management issue. If you tonight allow us to move forward with the land division, you will forever foreclose that issue from occurring again. That will no longer be a commercial parking lot. And I also think with all the time that's passed here, the neighbors shouldn't have to look at a commercial parking lot for an indefinite amount of time. We don't know when Mr. Groth is going to act on his zoning board variances. It could be never. We don't know, and we can't force him to move forward with either one of the two options that the planning division has asked. We're totally helpless here. That's why we're here tonight, to ask for your help to rule in our favor so that Hillian Homes can move forward. And last but not least, on one of my main points, in making your decision, as I pointed out in my letter, when you make an interpretive decision, you need to take into account the master plan. I pointed out 3 objectives of the master plan that building single family homes here will clearly comply with. I won't go through them chapter and verse, you've read it. And so as a result, holding up this project is somewhat adverse to the master plan. It shouldn't be held up. It should be allowed to move forward with the 2 single family homes. So I would ask, at the end of the day, what the zoning board dispenses is justice. It's in some of the criteria, rendering substantial justice to the applicant and its neighbors. That's in a variance context. But I'll hijack it here for this purpose, is that you dispense justice. I think it is very just for you to say, we understand the interpretation, but we believe justice merits that the applicant can move forward with 2 single family homes that are consistent with the zoning district and the overlay district, that the neighbors will enjoy the benefit of single family homes consistent with the integrity and the character of the neighborhood. Mr. Groth is not prejudiced in any way, shape, or form. He can move forward with his residential project. If he chooses for some reason to change his mind, he can try and seek additional parking with other lots in the area. So we are asking you to please dispense that justice this evening and to overturn the determination of the zoning administrator and allow us the land division to go through and the 2 single family homes to be constructed. both I and Mr. Ray are available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Cowan. Any questions for Mr. Cowan at this point? Ms. Zukin?
Mr. Cowan, you seem to be emphasizing the land division. Is it your understanding if you wanted to build a single family residence on the lot and not divide it, you still would be prohibited from doing that?
I can't answer that. That's not what we applied for. It would make sense to me that may still be applicable here. I don't think it's it's not necessarily the use in and of itself. It's the interpretation that we can't move forward. But we haven't asked for that. This is a 90-foot wide lot. The 2 45-foot lots are very consistent with other lots in the neighborhood.
And whose hand was next? Mr. Gavin.
I saw you attach the deed to your letter, and I didn't see anything in there where Mr. Groff retained any rights or anything like that in the property. And I'm presuming, I pretty much think I know the answer, but just want to confirm there are no other agreements, no separate easement agreements, anything like that where he retains any rights in that property.
Absolutely not. Mr. Ray can certainly attest to that. I've looked at all the documents and talked to him. There are no easements. There are no lease agreements. There never will be. Hillian Homes only does homes, and there would be no reason whatsoever. That property was sold free and clear to Hillian Homes, and they intend to build single-family homes.
Mr. Moore, then Mr. Ophak.
Have you contacted the gentleman that you bought the parking lot from to tell him what's going on and the issues that you're having?
Yes.
Okay.
And basically, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. We would not do that. But from Mr. Ray's discussions, he basically said he's done as much as he needs to do. He has written a letter that I attached that was submitted to the city when this difference of opinion kind of took place back last year. And he felt he's done as much as he can do. And to be honest with you, I think although he hasn't pursued, finalized the plans for the house, he is consistent in the fact that he did come and ask you for 9 variances, which is somewhat of a record. I think I had 8 once, but 9 exceeded that. And I know you were trying to work with him, and I applaud you for that. But it's very clear that the only direction that property is going to be able to go into is residential, because it does not have adequate parking for any kind of commercial venture and would need more. But yes, we did contact him, but we're not going to. He's not going to make application for a zoning variance or anything of that nature. He's not really compelled to. And so, we kind of sit in this state of suspended animation until something happens that we don't have any control over.
Mr. Ophak, I think I need next.
I'm assuming you guys, since you've done so many land divisions, building so much in Royal Oak and other places, you did your due diligence before you purchased the property. Was there any discussions when this was found out prior to purchasing the property about this whole arrangement?
Dennis,
yeah, why don't you go ahead, Patrick, because you were involved in it.
Yeah. When we did a search, when we did the title work, when we bought the property, Mr. Groth, I said, would you put a letter together? We had talked to Doug and the department and said, listen, this is our intent. And they said, okay. And everybody seemed to be sort of on board. Mr. Groth wrote the letter and said he would absolutely sign a release of the special land use on our property. But unfortunately, that was not allowed because somehow or another, and Dennis knows the legal jargon, this attaches to Borgo, not Borgo to us. So we weren't allowed to do that at the time, and honestly, completely blindsided by that fact. Like Dennis said, I don't know that in our search, anything like this has come up before.
Yeah. If I could just add that there was clearly nothing recorded against the property. Mr. Mr. Ray and Hillian Homes. I was not involved at that point. They conducted a title search. Nothing showed up on that. As you know, he's an experienced builder, has done land divisions. This issue never came up. And quite frankly, if he had come to me at the time, I would have said, based on the overlay district and the intent of the city to want to have single family homes there, I couldn't come to any other conclusion than this would be approved. But we find ourselves where we're at today. So clearly, the intent again is to build those 2 single family homes.
Right. Well, not seeing any other hands, and Mr. Murphy, you mentioned there is no audio correspondence on this item. So, Mr. Cowell, before I bring it back to this side of the table for further discussion, do you want us to move forward even though we are down a member this evening?
Yeah, Patrick, you want to move forward this evening?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
very
you.
good, gentlemen. All right. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to this side of the table. Is there any further discussion, or is anybody prepared to take action? Mr. Gavin.
And I think it was a question for Joseph. So I guess I just maybe I don't quite understand this, but like, is there any reason why, if like say we were to grant this tonight, is there a reason why a lot that's subject to this special land use, it's not really a permit because it's some sort of special land use grant. Why the split of a lot can't go forward? It seems to me that the special land use grant would just then continue to apply to both of those properties, those lots, once they're split. I mean, the use of those lots hasn't changed. There's still a parking lot on there. And then, as soon as they apply for building permits or the lot split or anything like that, or that's kind of where I'm at. Like, why can't the lot split go forward just because there's an overlay district on it, whereas basically all land in the city is subject to zoning. So it just kind of, to my mind, there's kind of a disconnect there. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that, or maybe that's a question for legal counsel too. I don't really know his thoughts on that.
Well, we've held the position that the parking lot portion of the overall site, that the parking lot is part of the approved site plan and special land use status. And that's the reason that the land division application was not approved by staff, is that the parking lot site is required parking for the commercial use on the opposite side of the alley. If the board overturns our determination and disagrees that that site was ever associated with the approved site plan for the overall site, which is the building site and the parking lot site, if you overturn the decision, the petitioner will be able to move forward to divide the property into 2 single-family home sites, and the commercial use on the west side of the alley, we've determined that it will still retain its site plan and special land use status. Obviously, it'll have a reduced number of parking spaces. So the petitioner, or rather the property owner on the west side of the alley that owns the building, will still have an approved site plan and special land use status. He will be able to reoccupy it with a commercial use, similar in essence of a commercial use. He would also, because the underlying zoning district is 1-family residential, he has the ability to build what he was approved for, to modify that building, build a single-family home. He could level that building in its entirety and build a brand new single-family home. Any of those actions, to modify the existing structure to a single-family home or to demolish it and build a new single-family home, at that point, the owner of the property west of the alley, he would revoke his site plan and special land use status, and it would never be able to be a commercial use again.
Okay. Was there any consideration, or has anybody brought up the fact that him actually selling this lot was an action in and of itself that broke his site plan? I mean, he no longer has any right to use those lots. So like in my mind, just the mere act of selling it is almost as if he's destroying it. You know, because he can't. You know, maybe the site plan called for that, but he no longer owns that. He can't tell people to go park on that lot. It's not his lot anymore.
Well, we've held the position that could apply to different uses throughout the city. For instance, a commercial use on Woodward Avenue where the building takes up the entire site. The petitioner goes to, has an accessory parking lot on the opposite side of the alley in the residential neighborhood. Been that way for many years. Someone comes in and says, I don't want that parking lot anymore. I'm just going to sell it off. Somebody can build a new single family home. Now they don't have any parking at all. They're in violation of their approved site plan, which included a commercial site and an accessory parking lot. Just because you sell the property doesn't negate an approved site plan. It adds a lot of complexity to the circumstance, as we can see here, but it doesn't change an approved site plan. An approved site plan has no bearing on ownership.
Mr. Klatt.
All that being said, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to overturn the zoning administrator's interpretation.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Klatt, seconded by Mr. Ofac. Mr. Klatt, any follow-up comments?
Now, I think Mr. Cowan raised some very interesting points, and the biggest one in my mind is that Mr. Groth sold that parking parcel. So in my mind, that just solidifies that he has every intent to move forward with the construction of a single family home per the variances that we granted, for the 9 variances we granted. And the fact that he's not here this evening or that he has not submitted a letter to refute this further solidifies that in my mind.
Mr. Ofac?
No, as much as I worry about him not going residential, I have to agree with Mr. Klatt that pretty much all indications right now indicate he's staying on track, because at the very least, he would have done something for this meeting to show against it. This is a unique circumstance, and I believe that it warrants the overturn.
Did I see another hand? Ms. Robinson. Ms. Robinson.
You're muted, Nancy.
Nancy, you're muted. Still. Nancy, you're still muted.
There, I'm sorry.
There you are. Okay, start over.
Okay. This is a question that's like more of a legal question. If we were to overturn the planning department's ruling, are we putting, what kind of legal jeopardy are we putting the city in as far as setting precedent for this?
I think we might want to refer that to Mr. Kaluzny.
I have to say I've never seen this issue before, so I don't know what kind of precedent it would be setting. You know, with zoning, every case is unique, and there really isn't necessarily precedent. But also, that being said, this case I've never seen a case like this. It's so unique. I don't think that's something that the board needs to worry about.
Excellent. Mr. Gavin.
I just want to say I'm going to be in support of this motion also, because I think that this, I understand why the administration held the way they did, but I just feel like they were hamstrung by the ordinance itself. There wasn't really, this is a case that was not contemplated, and I see that a lot with many of my clients. You know, I have special types of governmental entities that I represent, and there are general rules set up for schools that don't apply to some of the situations that some of my clients are in. So I have to deal with navigating tough issues like this. So this is a time where there's a tough issue here. And so I'm going to be in support of it, because I really don't like the idea of a third party being able to dictate the use of a property that he no longer owns. So.
All right, excellent. Any other comments? All right, I will be in support of this motion also, even though I do have some serious concerns as to what Mr. Groth's plans may be moving forward. My concerns, I don't think, should hamstring Mr. Cowan and his clients' ability to move forward. A property was offered for sale, a property was bought in good faith, and a property was paid for. And therefore, in my mind, I think he has a reasonable right to use that property as intended. So I think they're being unfairly victimized as a result of, frankly, a case unlike anything we've ever seen in the past. So with that being said, not seeing any other hands, I will go ahead and call for the roll call vote. Mr. Gavin,
Aye.
Mr. Clapp,
Aye.
Ms. George,
Yep.
I vote yes. Mr. Opak,
Aye.
Ms. Robinson,
Aye.
Ms. Zukin,
Aye.
and Mr. Moore.
Yes.
All right. Passes 8-0. You gentlemen are all set. Thank you very much.
Board, thank you so much for hearing us. I appreciate it very much. This is justice tonight for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, Dennis, don't do this to us again.
No, no, I won't, trust me. Thank you and good night.
All right, have a good night, guys. All right, moving right along to case number case E2, case number 210206. We've got a whole litany of variances being requested, so I'll just turn it over to Mr. Murphy.
Okay. Well, I will tell you, it doesn't get any easier. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we'll reference the fact that this property is located on South Maple, just south of West 11 Mile Road. And prior to mid-2020, I'll hover over the two properties that I'm referencing. 209 South Maple and 205 South Maple, both of those were held under common ownership at the same time by various parties for many years. Each lot was conveyed simultaneously during each property transfer. Both of the lots, as you can see, are as well as all of the properties on the east side of this block are very small, very narrow, at 30 feet by 114 and a half in depth. According to some provisions in the zoning ordinance, a single lot of record or two adjacent lots of record that are held under common ownership, and again, these two were held under common ownership at various points in time for many years. These two are considered one for the purposes of meeting the minimum lot size. At 30 feet wide and 114 feet deep, they certainly don't meet today's standard of being 50 feet wide and 6,000 square feet in lot area. The analysis that we conduct to determine whether they're the same size or larger than the majority on the block, we include all of the properties that you see on the map on the screen. Each does have a single family home that was built nearly 100, if not 100 years ago. But because they were held under common ownership for so long, staff did make the determination that if this house at 209 were removed, that because the adjacent property to the north was the same ownership, that this portion, 209, would be encompassed to make up for the fact that 205 does not meet the minimum lot size. So the petitioner in this case wants to demolish the house at 209, and I'll refer to the photographs to give you an indication. 209, the house at 209 sits very far back on the lot, been there for a very long time. 205, the adjacent property, very close, sits in line with the remainder of those on the street. In order to tear this house down and to have it recognized as a buildable single-family home so that they can build another single-family home, requires a variance from the minimum lot size standards. So the board should consider that as its first set of variance requests, is to, once this house is taken down, do we recognize it as being a separate piece of property from the adjacent property because they were held under ownership, same ownership for so many years? That would, if the board conveys the land division, the variances associated with the land division, it will stand that this site will now be able to be rebuilt with another single family home. And the petitioner based on their proposal, would need a host of variances in order to build the home that they have in mind. And we'll go through their drawings to explain the variance requests that they're seeking. So I'm going to scroll down to some of their drawings. They have provided elevations, and the first variance request that you'll note the design of the house is that it's a 3-story home and it contains a garage, an attached garage that's below grade. And that is best illustrated by this elevation. The house itself is measured at its highest point. We measure the height at the highest midpoint. Because the proposed house has so many peaks, we don't measure the height at the midpoint of this elevation. We measure the midpoint from the peak to this set of eaves. At that midpoint where I'll hover over, the house is 1.5 feet over. It's 31.5 feet. The maximum allowable at this point is 30 feet. So they would need a variance from the height requirement. As you can see, it does have an attached garage. That attached garage is more than 50% of the front facade of the home. It's 55% of the front facade of the home. So they're seeking a variance from the maximum allowable garage width for a house with a front entry attached garage. And I'll refer to their other set of drawings for the next set of variances. The adjacent homes, as you saw in the photograph, the adjacent homes, they have a front yard setback of 30 feet. And in the zoning ordinance, we measured the setback to the nearest point of living space, not a porch. So the drawing here is accurately reflecting that each of the adjacent homes has a front yard setback of 30 feet. The petitioner's proposed dwelling at its nearest point, the living space is 26.5 feet. So it's less than the minimum, which is 30. They'd need a variance from the minimum front yard setback. Because the whole house is shifted forward within that minimum required front yard setback, there are some variance requests related to the fact that the garage sticks out into the front yard setback, that the front porch and steps stick out into the front yard setback as well. And I'll go to the floor plan for the last variance request to illustrate in the drawings. There's the lower level because, again, the parking is on the lower level, the ground floor, the second floor, and the upper level. The ground floor, the entire space other than the set of stairs that lead to the first floor, the ground floor garage, the attached garage is 652 square feet. As many of the board members know, an attached garage, attached or detached, can only be 10% of the lot area. Because this is such a very small lot, that 10% maximum is 364 square feet. Again, the petitioner is proposing an attached garage that's 652 square feet. So they exceed that maximum allowable floor area for a garage, and they require a variance for that as well. We did not receive any written public comments, but we did receive one audio comment that came in via a phone call. So perhaps Carol would be able to play that for the board at this point in time.
Yes, just give me a moment to cue it up. I'm going to be sharing my screen. I'm sharing this computer sound. You may need to adjust your volume up a little bit, but it does give very good quality.
Hello, my name is Brian Reynolds. I'm calling today in regard to 210206. Again, that is 21-0206. 209 South Maple Avenue. That is 209 South Maple Avenue. I'm calling in opposition of all variances to be waived for construction listed on that property. Thank you for taking my comment today.
And that concludes the public comment received.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clapp.
So, Mr. Murphy, if we deny the land division, it almost seems like that small, inconsistently placed house is really the only thing that can take place here. I mean, even if they were to, I guess they could modify that house or expand upon it, but it seems like it would have a host of variance violations. It seems like it's in the rear yard. They would need a variance for that if they try to expand upon it. Is that really the case? They can't do anything with this?
Quite possibly, yes. Yes. You're correct in that you noted it is non-conforming in a wide variety of ways. Yes.
And I guess it's the last question. So it just, I mean, it's not really a question. The garage seems a bit confusing as, but I get the spirit of the ordinance is that you were trying not to overtax the lot with a large garage, but in this case, the garage is really concealed below grade. So it seems like they're being penalized unfairly for a subterranean garage, but I guess that's just a letter of the ordinance, so.
Well, if the garage were at grade, it could still be of the same design potentially. It would necessitate a variance. You're correct in that some designs you wouldn't know whether it was 2 cars or a car and a half deep. So I would indicate that it probably doesn't have as much relevance that it's below grade or at grade, but more related to the fact that it's deeper than it is wider.
Thank you.
And I think I saw Mr. Moore and then Ms. George.
Okay, so you've mentioned that it has been under common ownership. Is it still under common ownership today?
No, it is not. It
Okay.
recently, to the best of my knowledge, from what I can recall, it did change hands.
Okay.
And yes, it did change hands. We did convey that message of non-conformity with regard to the lot size to the last 2 or 3 owners, and the current owner is now aware of it as they've applied for the variance requests.
Okay.
But I don't believe it was known to them prior to making application for these variances.
I understand. Thank you.
Could I take a moment to introduce myself?
I will get to you, sir. Let me go through the board first.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. George.
Do we know the interior square footage of the planned house on this lot?
I can look that up real quickly, and I'm sure that the petitioner can express that as well, but I will look that up on the drawings as we discuss.
Okay.
Yeah, when we get to the petitioner, I'm sure he can tell us that. Any other questions for staff at this point? Ms. Zukin.
You're right, Joseph. It doesn't get any easier. I'm confused about this one because since it is separate ownership, I don't understand why we have to do a lot split and why it's not just because they're tearing down the house, we have to give a variance for the lot size.
Well, the variance would in essence recognize that this very small piece of property doesn't conform to the standards and that the board is recognizing that it's a buildable single-family home site. That you then have the ability to grant variances, all, some, or none, or modified of what they want to build. But the land division, the variances related to the land division are in essence to acknowledge the fact that it's extraordinarily below the standard for a single-family home site.
Any other questions? Mr. Rolfak.
So basically, if we deny all this, they're basically stuck with their house as it is because it's already been split from the other lot. Or ownership wise, it's been split. Land division wise, it has not been split, correct?
Well, they have their own separate tax identification numbers. and they have in the past, but because they're adjacent to each other and they were held under common ownership, there's a clause in the ordinance that doesn't get referenced very often. But if two owners ago, they had taken down the house, this subject property, the house way in the back, and they wanted to add a driveway for the house at 205 and a garage, or expand the house across at 205. They wanted to expand it into that lot next door. Because they held it under common ownership, they would be able to do that. The lot would meet the minimum lot size requirement, and they would have more room in order to do something to expand their presence at the site. Obviously, in doing so, they would have negated the fact that it was recognized as a separate buildable lot, but now we would combine them under one tax identification number, and it would be a larger size piece of property.
Mizuka.
I'm sorry, but just for clarification purposes, under the enumerated variance requests, we're not being asked to grant a split. Is that correct?
Well, the variances relate to meeting the minimum lot size requirements, which are necessary to recognize it as a separate buildable property under a land division standard. Yes, so in order for it to be recognized as a separate buildable lot, the first two variances are needed in order to distinguish it separate from the adjacent property.
All right, I'm still confused. I'm sorry. It is a separate lot now with a house on it.
It has a separate tax ID number, it has a separate single family home, correct. But because they were held, because they both don't conform to the ordinance requirements in terms of the minimum lot width or depth or width or area, because they were held under ownership, common ownership, the ordinance says that if anything happens to one of those structures, you can't build another single family home because you hold both of them, they together meet the minimum width and minimum area requirement. That common ownership clause, very few instances. I can't think of this particular instance anywhere else in the city. And there was an individual that held both of these homes in common ownership, I think for about 30 years.
Okay.
So they retain the right to take down both structures and put up one new house. Again, they could take down one of the structures and put up a garage or a driveway, because at that point, because what they owned, the size of what they owned would meet the minimum lot area standards for a single family home site.
So it's just because they're going to tear this house down and build another one. Why couldn't we, instead of dealing with it as a lot split, why couldn't we just say you can't build on it because it's not wide enough? Doesn't meet the, I mean, you can tear it down and have a vacant prop. I just don't, I'm not following it, but.
All right, well, I'm going to move along to the petitioner. Hopefully he can answer some questions and add a little more clarity to it. So, Mr. Flintoff, the floor is yours. Please tell us about your project.
If you could actually allow my business partner, Josh Maddox, into the meeting, he's in the waiting. And then also Eric Wallstrom, the owner. Appreciate it.
All right, sir. Ms. Reiner?
Okay, I can let Mr. Maddox in. I don't see Mr. Wallstrom in there.
Okay, then he must be on the live feed, and we'll deal with it. We're communicating.
Not have identified himself. They must identify themselves before we let them in the meeting. So.
Okay, that's fine. Josh and I will handle the call. So I'm Tim Flintoff with 4545 Architecture, and my business partner Josh Maddox also with 4545 Architecture. Yeah, so what we've presented here tonight is as you guys have all discussed, a very interesting tiny lot situation that we're trying to build a single family home on. The building is about 2,300 square feet, gross square feet in total. We tried to come up with a design that used the roof lines to reduce the visual from the street of a third floor, as well as we felt it was important to bring the garage down to again help bring the overall mass of the building in line with the neighbors. Josh can add more to the design. I think he has a very good, elegant way of speaking about it.
Sure. So on this block, there's a mix of about story and a half tall bungalow homes and 2-story homes to the other side of the street, which are typically feature brick and horizontal siding with hip roofs. So what we've done in proposing a 3-story home that does include a small bonus room in that third story, but trying to use that design strategy of a full 2-story home with a hip roof to, as Tim stated, try to mask the visual appearance of that third story from the street. So while looking at the home in straight on elevation from the front, you can definitely see that third story peeking up. If you scroll to the next page of the set and look at the 3D images, which depict a view from the street, you can see that that third story is set pretty far back, justified to the rear of the house, so that the hip roof is what's visible from the front, which is very similar to the overall massing of the homes across the street. And that third floor actually begins to read as a set of dormers that are peeking out near the rear of the house. So again, in meeting the client's requests for specific amenities for the house, being this third floor amenity bonus room with access to a walkout patio on the rear, and then also providing a 2-car garage in a lot that is too narrow to provide a driveway to a garage in the rear. The strategy of pushing the garage below grade underneath the house kind of accomplishes that goal without starting to crowd the site with an additional building. So again, it's a very unique situation with these small lots, and we're trying to provide a home that provides a unique set of amenities, and doing it in a way that to the best of our ability fits with the homes on the block, particularly those 2-story homes directly across the street.
Excellent. Any questions for the petitioner at this point? Mr. Olfak.
Mr. Klatt held his hand up first. I'll let him go.
Whoever wants to
go. That's okay. Thank you. I think you guys came up with a nice plan for a challenging lot. That's for sure. It's a very small lot. We've designed several of these too around the city, so I get the challenges with it. But we're looking at 9 variance requests. We're always trying to figure out a way to reduce these. And looking at the rear yard, it looks like you maybe had a little bit of room to push the house back. I think you're at 37'10", if I'm not mistaken, 35. Did you consider pushing the house back, or maybe even going for 1 rear yard variance versus 3 front yard variances?
Just so I understand, are we going to be answering each question, or is there going to be a series of questions and then a discussion afterwards, just so I don't jump in?
No, please answer.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I believe that we are amenable to, because we're only talking about 3.5 feet in order to get the front of the house in line with that 30-foot front setback. I believe that's what the report indicated. I think we're amenable to that in order to eliminate some of those front yard variances, and potentially trade them for maybe a potential single rear yard variance. I think we do have flexibility in that.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it seems like we're splitting hairs over a couple of feet, but it might have an impact on the street from street presence, pushing that mass back a little bit, even if it's a few feet. So, thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, and I think we had Mr. Oak in queue.
No, that was pretty much my same thought process and trying to find out what their thoughts were. So I guess they answered my question.
Ms. Zukin.
How many square feet would be lost if you got rid of that third floor bonus room?
So the third floor bonus room is about 200 square feet of occupiable space.
Okay.
Mr. Moore.
I guess one of my questions here is also reducing the number of variances. You're looking at like 1.5 feet of the maximum allowable 30 feet height. Is there anything you could do to bring that down and possibly eliminate another variance on the list?
So one thing that is kind of a variable in that is getting down to that subterranean garage. So as we push the height of the house down, it's going to push the it's going to push the garage down and require a longer ramp or potentially a steeper ramp. So really, it's kind of this fine juggling game between a few of these issues. So in our kind of argument for the height of the house, while we understand that because we're talking about what's perceived as a full third story, and therefore the roof of the third story would be counting as the highest peak, because we're expressing the bulk of the roof with this main hip where the eave is at the top of the second floor. That was why we indicated that as sort of our interpretation of the main roof, and the roof of the third floor really being a set of dormers similar to if you converted some space in an attic to occupiable space, and you had a dormer in that attic. You're not necessarily increasing the height of the house, and the main roof would still be considered that roof that starts at the second floor. So that was our interpretation, and that might be a kind of a loose kind of maybe even incorrect interpretation, but that was kind of our approach to the height question.
However, Josh, we could knock away at that number a little bit because we're going to commit to moving the building back 3 feet. So that would allow us to maintain the grade and then bring the building down. I'd have to do the calculation to see, but I would think we would be able to reduce that number probably by half.
Right. So I think that with the playing of the placement of the house on the site, there's definitely a chance that we can reduce the variances. So we'll have to look at, what we need to kind of keep that rear yard usable. And again, we're willing to kind of to play that game to make the adjustments and help reduce these variances.
Any other questions for the petitioner, Mr. Gavin?
I guess it's not really for the petitioner so much as you, Mr. Chairman. If we're going to be changing the variances based on the placement of the house, are we going to, would it make sense for them to come back next month after having a chance to actually figure out what those numbers are? I don't know that we can actually do that on the fly tonight.
No, Mr. Gavin, actually, I've been thinking about that exact point. I just wanted to give the petitioners an opportunity to finish making their presentation to us. Are there any other questions for the petitioner at this point? All right, not seeing any. Oh, Mr. Oak, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, do you want to ask them if they want us to proceed since we don't have a full board?
Yes, I'm going to do that also. Okay. but I had a procedural question that I wanted to run by Mr. Murphy first. We're almost dealing with two separate, coexisting issues here. Is there value in moving items A and B just to make the determination as to whether or not this is buildable, treat that as one issue, and then we can talk about the potential other issues.
Unquestionably, I think that's of value, yes, because the
Okay.
petitioner, you will have led the petitioners down the road of modifying their drawings. It's wise to let them know the
If they
two
can
first
do the-
variances, absolutely.
Exactly. That was my thinking also. All right, so going back to the petitioners, we are down a member tonight. We can table this entirely and take it all up next month, or we can move forward. It is entirely up to you, gentlemen.
Is it possible to get approved with administrative approval of the items in question, or do we have to have board approval for those?
We probably have to have board approval. I mean, just as a standard practice, it's really not appropriate for this board to redesign what you've designed on the fly and drop it in the city's lap to figure out.
I'll add that. Sure, I'll add that if the drawings are modified to comply, let's say that the board tables variances C through I, which are essentially related to the design of the structure. If any of those variances are reduced to the point of compliance, you would not need to seek a variance request at the next meeting or any meeting in the future. Some of the design aspects that we're referring to, I think, relate to C, the height, definitely not D, the width of the garage, and definitely not the size of the garage. But you might be able to come into compliance with a modified design to eliminate variance requests related to the setbacks of the house itself, the garage, and the front porch and steps. But you probably would come back with the same variance requests for the width of the attached garage and the size of the attached garage.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And in the future, the board, let's say you conduct a redesign and you come back at next month's meeting, the board can always grant you less of a variance request from this original request, but they can't grant you more of a request because that would be a new variance request. So any modified design should necessitate new variances.
Right. And this is a question, and this I might already know the answer to this, but is it possible to get ruling on some of those other variances that we would potentially be seeking anyway? For instance, the side setbacks and the percentage of garage at the front and total size of the garage that we probably would not be addressing in a redesign?
I think the chairman, you can correct me if you feel otherwise, but I feel it's entirely appropriate for you, due to the fact that there's fewer than there is not a full board tonight. It's appropriate for you to ask to have particular variance requests postponed and for the board to proceed forward on other variance requests. You have the ability to break it into pieces if you so choose. I think that the first two variance requests would be the most logical to move forward with at first, should you choose to ask the board to vote on those tonight.
So at this point, gentlemen, I do need an answer, as we are going to start moving forward procedurally in terms of any action that we might take. Do you want us to move forward, or do you want us to delay the entire thing?
No, we'd want to move forward at least with A and B. And what other ones do we think we can move forward with? Sorry, there was a lot of.
How about?
Let's hold on here a second. So again, let's treat this as the two separate items that it is. So since the gentlemen are comfortable moving forward, does anybody, before we start talking about any design changes and what have you, with variances A and B? Mr. Olfak.
I'll motion to grant variances A and B as requested.
We have a motion. We have a second by Mr. Klatt. Mr. Olfak.
I think the hardship of this lot and the size and the uniqueness of it, it presents the reason why these two variances should be granted. There's not too many lots like this in Royal Oak nor in the circumstances. So in that case, there's already a single family home on that spot, even though it's all the way in the back. I have no problem with another single family home being placed on that spot in a different location. So because of that, I have no problem granting these two variances.
Any follow-up, Mr. Klatt?
I think Mr. Opak summed it up well.
All right, any other comments on the motion? Ms. Zukin?
I would just add that it appears that 5 out of the 11, so almost half of the lots are only 30 feet wide. So if it was one more lot, then they wouldn't need the variance as far as a split, if that's what we're doing. So I don't have a problem with granting A and B.
All right, with that said, I will go ahead and do the roll call vote on items A and B only. Mr. Opak?
Aye.
Ms. Robinson?
Aye.
Ms. Zukin?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Gavin?
Aye.
Mr. Klatt?
Aye.
Ms. George?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. All right, so with A and B out of the way, that moves us along to items C through I. Let me chime in. It is my particular feeling that since these gentlemen are going to have to come in front of us anyways, instead of us granting, this one and not that one and this one and not that one, why don't we let them go back to the drawing board, submit to the city what they're going to submit, and we can look at a completely new plan next month and look at it in its entirety. If somebody feels otherwise, please say so. Mr. Opak.
I agree, and I'll make a motion to delay. I'm sorry, my mouth's to delay the remaining motions till next month or whenever they come ready to re-present.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Opak, and I see a second by Mr. Klatt. Anything else that you would want to add, Mr. Opak?
No.
No, and at this point, depending on what these gentlemen do, I mean, we're looking at C through I. We could very well be looking at C through G next month. At this point, we just don't know. So I think it makes more sense to table those items until we're looking at the complete package. All right. Yeah. Not seeing any other comments, I will go ahead and do the roll call vote. I vote yes. Ms. George?
Yes.
Mr. Klatt?
Yes.
Mr. Gavin?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Zukin?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
And finally, Mr. Opak.
Yes.
All right, gentlemen, we will see you in a month, and hopefully we'll be able to get this whole thing wrapped up.
Mr. Murphy, when do we need to have a submission by for consideration?
You can submit those drawings to me at any point in time, and we'll add them to the board's agenda. Since you're not seeking new variance requests, there's no need for us to meet any type of publication deadline. So you can submit those. I would, and I'm sure the board would appreciate if you submitted them at least 2 or 3 days prior. Okay. So I think that should probably leave you plenty of time, and you can keep us in the loop in terms of when you anticipate to submit and if you think you need more time.
No, that should be plenty of time. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Take care now. All right. So moving right along to item E3, which is case number 210207, public hearing on the appeal of Keith Longston, petitioner, and Jim Bell, owner, for the following variances: alter and expand a non-conforming structure, B, waive 0.05 feet of the minimum required 5-foot west side yard setback, C, waive 0.01 feet of the minimum required 5-foot east yard setback to permit construction of an addition to an existing non-conforming single-family dwelling located at 612 Parkdale Avenue. Mr. Murphy.
I'm going to share my screen. This site is improved with an existing single-family home with an attached garage, as you can see, and we'll jump to the survey, which illustrates the current conditions, which are relevant to the variance request. The house currently maintains a non-conforming west side yard setback, and that's shown here the site isn't a perfect rectangle. It's a little off center, and the house is the way it's placed. It results in some peculiar setbacks in the fact that it has a non-conforming west side yard setback at 4.6 feet. The east side yard setback does comply at 5.1 feet. The minimum side yard setback on each side is 5. It also has a front entry attached garage that projects out beyond the living space, and it's more than 50%. The petitioner has taken the survey, and they've done an excellent job of illustrating for you where the proposed additions will occur. So we'll bring that up on the screen. I think it'd be very helpful to our conversation. And in the hatched areas, you'll see where the petitioner is proposing to construct some additional living space. At the front entry, they propose 132 square feet of additional living space, and along the east side of the house, as well as the rear, with additional living space and a rear covered porch. The existing home and the proposed additions, they set the total lot coverage right at the maximum 30%. So there's no variance request, but they'll be reaching that maximum. And as the petitioner has shown in the drawing, I'll zoom in on it a little bit closer. Due to the placement of the house on the site and keeping that same building line with the addition, again, the existing setback is 4.6 feet, required to be 5. And at its nearest point, that addition is shown here. It gets a little closer and at 4.5 feet. So the addition does not gain compliance with the current ordinance requirements of a minimum 5 foot side yard setback. They need the variance request to expand the house in a non-conforming manner, and a slight variance request of 1/2 foot from the minimum required side yard setback. The shaded area along the side and the rear also notes that the opposite side of the home, at nearest point, the addition will be 4.9 feet. So not quite 5, but 4.9 feet. So they're seeking that ever slight variance from the minimum required 5 foot side yard setback on that side of the house to expand the structure. And the petitioner has provided some floor plans and some excellent elevations to give you an understanding of what the proposal, what the resulting house will look like and how it will function afterward. We did receive one written request, written correspondence or public comment, and that's included at the end of the online report. We did not receive any audio public comment for the board to consider tonight.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Murphy? Mr. Olfak?
So just to make sure, because I noticed on the site plan, the chimney does not count towards the site setback at all on the east side?
Yes, I will zoom in on that for everybody's point of reference. And I'll share my screen. You're referencing the existing, the proposed chimney.
Yes.
Yes. And the zoning ordinance does have specific language where it allows certain type of items to project no more than 2 feet into a minimum required side yard setback. We measure, the side yard setback is measured to the nearest point of living space, and we allow for different type of projections to go beyond that living space, no more than 2 feet. Those include chimneys, eaves, window wells are included in those type of things, but a chimney is an allowable projection. It's not counted as living space, and it does not have to meet that minimum 5 foot setback.
Okay, just wanted to understand and make sure.
A good question.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Murphy? All right, not seeing any. I see the petitioner is present. Sir, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Excuse me. A couple of things I'd like to point out with regard to the hardships that create the practical difficulties here. Number one, it's a survey. It's a very irregularly shaped lot in that it's sort of skewed in the east-west direction. So that, of course, creates some difficulty in complying with the setback. In addition, the existing home is not quite parallel with east and west property lines, so that kind of exacerbates the problem even more. Of course, the existing building is non-conforming on the west side. The existing attached garage is non-conforming in that it's completely in front of the living space, projecting a little over 20 feet into the front yard beyond the front building line. The existing attached garage now makes up for about 66% of the building's primary facade, which is over the 50% that's allowed. But the rationale for some of these variances will be as follows. The additions that are being proposed will extend the line of the existing building in all cases. So Mr. Murphy, could you please put up the site plan again? Be helpful. So as you can see with all the additions, we are following the line of the existing building. And just by virtue of the lot being skewed and the home not being parallel to those lot lines really creates the need for the variance. If in fact the original home were built parallel to the side property lines, it's likely that the variances would not even be required. So we are creating the minimum variance necessary by following the line of the existing buildings because it provides for sort of a seamless appearance that will blend with the existing building. As I mentioned, the existing garage projects beyond the front building line as is. However, the proposed addition to the northwest corner of the house will increase the width of the building's primary facade by about 8 feet. So from the northwest corner of the addition over to the garage, that now becomes the primary facade. And that allows us to reduce the nonconformity. The garage will now take up only 53% of the building's primary facade rather than 66%. So it's a little bit of an improvement there just because of the way we're kind of flattening out that primary facade of the house. So minimizes that variance, doesn't get rid of that nonconformity, but sort of minimizes the amount of variance that we're requesting. The side yard variances are the result, again, of the existing house being skewed on this irregularly shaped lot. The proposed additions comply with all the other provisions of the ordinance, including front and rear yard setbacks, building height, and as Mr. Murphy noted, we are right at 30% of lot coverage. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for the petitioner at this point? All right, doesn't look like any. Then I will go ahead and bring it back to this side of the board. This side of the table, Mr. Olfak.
I motion to grant the variances as requested.
We have a motion by Mr. Olfak, and I think I saw Mr. Gavin's hand first. As the second, Mr. Olfak.
As the petitioner brought up, the hardships they have is this is a unique property where the house is skewed. So what works in some parts of the house for conforming with the setbacks doesn't work with others. They're keeping it consistent with the house overall outline of it as in filling pieces. And because of that, I don't have any heartburn granting them as their variances as requested.
Mr. Gavin, any follow-up?
No, Anthony summarized it really well.
All right, any other comments from the board? Mr. Clapton, Ms. Zukin.
Just a quick observation. I just want to, commend the applicant. And we're not here to really question design or discuss design, but I just want to give you proud. I think it's a great, well-integrated design. It's very tasteful and well thought out. So I just want to give you credit for that. It's a great design. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Ms. Zukin.
They are very minor variances that they're requesting. And the fact that they're reducing the look of the width of the garage and bringing it closer to the 50% makes me support this.
All right, any other comments? All right, not seeing any, I will go ahead and do the roll call vote. Mr. Olfak?
Aye, sorry.
Where's Ms. Robinson? Ms. Zukin,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Gavin,
Aye.
Mr. Platt,
Yes.
Ms. George,
Yes.
and I vote yes also. All right, you are all set. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Okay, moving right along to our next item, number 4, which is case number 210208, public hearing on the appeal of Bradford Angelini petitioner and Tom and Marcia Cardelli, owners for the following variances. A, alter and expand a non-conforming structure. B, waive 4.9 feet of the minimum required 25-foot west front yard setback. And C, waive 8.5% or 844 square feet of the maximum permitted 30% lot coverage to permit conversion of an existing two-family dwelling into a single-family dwelling with an attached accessory structure and garage located at 423 to 425 Oakdale Street. Mr. Murphy.
As noted, this is an existing two-family or two-unit dwelling. You can see on that photograph in front of you the entrance to one of the units, and I'll go to the opposite view, which is the entrance to the other unit. The petitioner is proposing to convert this to a single-family home. It does need to meet all the standards for a single-family home in the one-family residential zoning district. And the petitioner proposes to convert the existing porch area for the tenant space that I'll hover over near their front entrance to convert this area to additional living space. I'll refer to their floor plans, and they've done an excellent job of shading or hatching that area to illustrate where the additional floor space will occur. It's that porch entrance to the unit here, as they reference as new infill of existing porch with living space. You'll see that they maintain an existing front yard setback of 20 feet. We measure that to the nearest point of living space, which is in line with the area that they're proposing to do an addition. The minimum required front yard setback is 25 feet. So their proposed ever slight addition keeps the living space in line with the existing nonconformity. So that small addition does not gain conformance with a minimum required 25-foot front yard setback. It would maintain that existing 20-foot setback. And they're seeking a variance to expand the structure in a non-conforming manner and waive the minimum of the front yard setback for that addition. They're also proposing interior renovations, obviously, that converted to a single-family home. There is currently a detached garage, a driveway that leads to a detached garage in the back. They're proposing to connect the converted structure to a single-family home to the garage with a mudroom addition, so it would make it an attached garage. We measure the minimum required rear yard setback to the nearest point of living space, which is the new mudroom addition, and it meets that standard ever so slight, but it does meet that standard of a minimum of 35 feet, so they comply. However, the addition of the mudroom and the small addition at the front of the structure, they, in addition to the existing lot coverage, they result in a total lot coverage of 38.5% of the lot area. Based on this lot size, the structure can only have 30% lot coverage. There's always a peculiarity in every circumstance, and the peculiarity is that this particular site was included in the one-family residential overlay district. I'm going to go back to the photograph. This site was included in the one-family residential overlay district as a conforming two-family structure, meaning that the site was rezoned to one-family residential, but because this was an existing two-family structure at the time the ordinance was created, It was granted site plan, it was granted special land use status in conformance with lot coverage, number of units, parking, things of that nature. As it is right now, the house and the garage exceed 30% lot coverage. But because it was granted that special land use status, it said it's fine. By converting it to a single family home, it needs to meet the maximum lot coverage allowable for the one family residential zoning district, which is 30%. As the structure sits now, it has total lot coverage of 37.2%. So it already exceeds that 30%. Those two small additions that the petitioner are proposing increase the square footage of the lot area of the lot coverage by 129 square feet, or 1.3% more. So the board needs to grant a variance from the maximum allowable lot coverage for a single family home in order for the petitioner to convert this to a single family house and to do those small additions. And with that, I will answer any questions that you might have, and note that we did not receive any written public comment, and we do not have any audio public comment to provide tonight.
Excellent, thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Murphy? All right, not seeing any. I see the petitioners are present. Who would like to go first? Mr. Angelini, please go, sir. And you're on mute, by the way.
So as was explained very clearly, and again, thank you very much for meeting with us this evening on our remodeling here. The building as stands has a higher percentage than is required once it becomes a single family house, and it also is forward of the setback. The interior of the home will undergo a complete remodeling, creating spaces appropriate for a single family home. Tom and Marcia Cardelli have owned the property for many, many years and have decided to make it their permanent residence now. They love the street and they love the location in Royal Oak, where they can walk downtown. The proposed addition in the front is only to fill in basically to eliminate that front door, because there'd be a ton of confusion, obviously, if you had two front doors for a single family home. So we basically fill that porch in. As was described, the line of the outside wall is in line with the existing wall. And then it also fits underneath the overhang of the roof. That's where the porch is. So there's really no, it doesn't in any way exceed or change the relationship of the home to the street. It's just filling in that little place. And then we use it as an opportunity to put the tub in it. We'll see if that works. And then the other, and that's only an 11 square foot addition. The addition on the back is a 118 square foot mudroom, and it connects the home to the garage. And since this is going to be the Cardelli's final home, and this addition will allow Tom and Marcia to move comfortably and safely between the home and the garage, especially on a day like today where it's super frigid. The 118 square foot addition does add, as I said, between the two pieces, 1.3% of lot coverage. The connector is approximately in the center of the lot, so it would have no effect on the neighbor to the north. And then the neighbor to the south is actually the parking lot for the First Presbyterian Church, which is accessed from Hendry Boulevard. In regard to the setback issue on the front, if you look at the site, all of the homes to the north of the Cardelli's residence are pretty much all lined up. So it's not like, in terms of averages, their home is not forward of any of the other homes, and in terms of averaging, in terms of setbacks. So we're not doing anything, we're not violating anybody's views or such, or closeness to the street that way. And then, as I said, to the south is just the back parking lot of that church. So there's no neighbors that they're interfering with at all. So that's about it. It's a pretty simple project, and I think Tom has something to say.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Marcia and I, my wife and I, we purchased, we're the owners of the St. Mary's Convent. And those of you who are familiar of Lincoln and Lafayette know that we purchased it about 25 years ago. We've taken care of it. And I think that area of downtown, and we're real proud of that fact. So we've been, involved with Royal Oak for many years. I run my law practice out of that site, Cardelli Landfear PC. We purchased this existing home that we're talking about here today about 25 years ago from my mom and dad. My dad was ill. We wanted to move them close to us. And after my dad died, my mom ended up living there for 20 plus years and died in her 90s. And during those decades, my in-laws moved in on the other side. So for a long time, we called that the parents' house. And so we were very to have this home. And I can tell you, they absolutely enjoyed it. They were active seniors. They walked downtown often. And we relished the fact of seeing them do that. And they all got along too. So that was really special. So now Marcia and I are moving out of a rather large house here in Pleasant Ridge. We don't need it. We had 4 children. They've all grown and left. And we'd like to make Royal Oak our last stop. And so we're doing quite a renovation. I think we're going to improve that home and that block quite a bit by the renovation we want to put in there. And we're asking you to look at this variance. We think that it's a unique home. It's had an interesting history that Mr. Murphy just went over with respect to variances, et cetera. And we think the addition of the mudroom, for an attached garage is something that will not harm any of the neighbors at all. And so we would appreciate your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right, any questions for the petitioner at this point? All right, not seeing any. I'll bring it back to this side of the table. Mr. Moore?
I'm going to make a motion that we move for approval of these variances.
We have a motion by Mr. Moore, and I see
I will
a second by Mr. Ofak. Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I think what they're asking for here is very minor. And they're making it a single family home, taking it from a multifamily to a single family. And they're converting it to what they need. And like they said, this is their final home, and they want to be able to design something. And moving into Royal Oak is a plus. So I welcome them.
Thank you. Mr. Ofak.
The hardships they seek is the fact that they want to alter or expand a non-conforming structure already, so they can't help the fact that this structure was already non-conforming. And they can't help the fact of already where the front offset was with their second entrance that they want to infill. So definitely not doing any harm there. It's keeping with the same line. The breezeway, had it be longer and more impactful to the site, I might have more of a problem, but since it's not really impacting the site that much, I don't have a problem with that request.
All right, any other comments? All right, not seeing any, I will go ahead and do the roll call vote. Switch back pages here. I'll start at the top this time. Mr. Ofak?
Aye.
Ms. Robinson?
Aye.
Ms. Zukin?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Gavin?
Aye.
Mr. Clapp?
Aye.
Ms. George?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, you're all set.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Thank
very
you so much. What do you anticipate moving in there, you think?
If you ask the landowner, I'm going to start kicking my architect to get.
Have a great night, gentlemen.
We're about a month out for permits.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that moves us right along to item number 5. Mr. Clapp.
Mr. Chair, I'll need to recuse myself from this case as my company is directly involved.
Okay, very good. All right, so that moves us again, item 5, which is case number 210209, public hearing on the appeal of Jeffrey Clapp petitioner and Darren and Christy Cepela, owners for the following variances: alter and expand a non-conforming structure, waive 7.4 feet of the minimum required 27.3 feet west front yard setback, waive the prohibition of a second-story balcony along the west facade within the required setback along Woodland Avenue to permit construction of additions to an existing non-conforming single-family dwelling located at 2022 Northwood Boulevard. Mr. Murphy.
I'll start with sharing my screen. It'll be helpful to our conversation. This site is located at the intersection of Northwood and Woodlawn. It's a two-story single-family home with an attached garage that's accessed off of Woodland. Because this is a corner lot, it requires a front yard setback along Northwood. And due to the orientation of the lot to the north on Woodland, it requires a setback equivalent to that house to the north. It requires a setback along Woodland equivalent to that house to the north. So I'll kind of hover over that area. And nearest point, the existing dwelling, the existing house has a non-conforming setback along Woodland, and the garage has a non-conforming setback along Woodland. You can see from the aerial photograph and from the site photographs, that it's a very wooded lot, especially directly adjacent to the home and to the attached garage. I'll jump to the architect's drawings, and I think they'll be extremely helpful in demonstrating where the proposed additions are. The architect has illustrated the setback of the house equivalent to north on Woodlawn in that dashed line. So they've illustrated portions of the house, this tiny little corner of the house, which is currently within that required front yard setback of the house to the north, and a small portion of the attached garage is located within that front yard setback as well. The petitioner is proposing to add additional living space above the existing attached garage. The second story addition, that living space complies with the required front yard setback, despite the fact that the first floor does not. And the zoning ordinance limits an open covered porch to no more than 1 story in height. And our office has held that this provision excludes second story balconies within the front yard setback. And again, this house requires a front yard setback on both street frontages. You'll see, if I can slowly get to the aerial, to the site photograph, you'll see that the existing house, the setback along Woodland Avenue, they do have a balcony as part of the design of the home. We'll go back to the architect's drawings to illustrate that the petitioner is proposing an addition on that portion of the house. That addition results in not only the living space projecting out further into the required front yard setback along Woodland Avenue, but it also, the design would maintain, as it's they believe an essential feature of the house, that reestablishing a non-conforming balcony on the second floor, which necessitates a variance. I'll go back to one more drawing of the petitioner that illustrates in yellow the proposed additions and the areas that require a variance. So the existing home ends, the ground floor ends here. You'll see that little notch is within the setback. It's proposed to extend further towards Woodlawn Avenue, and only this sliver of the addition is within the required setback. So the variances are related to extending a little bit further into that required setback and the provision of not allowing for balconies within the setback. We did receive, the petitioner provided a written comment from a neighbor as part of their summary package for today. And staff did receive 2 written correspondences or public comments that are included in the online report. We did not receive any audio public comment for this particular case.
All right, excellent, Mr. Murphy. Before I open up for any questions for staff, now that we are down to 7 board members for the clarification of the petitioner and his representatives, they are going to need 5 out of 7 affirmative votes. All right, just so we know what we're dealing with moving forward.
Correct.
All right, any questions for Mr. Murphy? All right, not seeing any. I see the petitioners are present. Who wants to go first?
Darren, if you don't mind going first, and just I'll follow up after that.
Yeah, I can start. Can you hear me?
Yes, and your Zoom shows a different name. So for the record, can you state your first and last name and address, please?
Yes, my name is Darren Sapilla. I'm here with my wife, Christy,
Okay,
and that's
gotcha.
the name on the account there.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, okay. And we obviously we live at 2022 Northwood Boulevard, and we've been on and off long-term residents of Royal Oak, 25 years or so. I've known my wife, and we've been here. Most recently, we've had a home in closer to downtown that we lived there for 8 years, and we renovated it. And through that time, we've wanted to and always look for a more of a spacious, long-term old home, and we all consistently were looking for one, and made a few bids in the Northwood and Vincetta neighborhoods, and thankfully we were able to purchase this wonderful home on Northwood Boulevard, and we've been really excited for that opportunity. And in fact, just doing the yard work in the yard, the neighbors have come by and expressed their excitement as well that we're kind of fixing it up and renovating it, and obviously bringing on the architects here. They really were able to expand the vision and the opportunity to really enhance the home and give us really a flavor for a nice home that's has a little bit more livable space. In particular, the family room that we wanted to expand, what we're going to call the family room, and bring my wife's grandparents' piano back into the Royal Oak area, who we're getting it from her parents actually tomorrow. So that's we're looking forward to having a nice space for that long term, and we're excited about that. And we're able to also get some approval from our near neighbors. So we recently talked to our neighbors on both sides of our home here, and they expressed full endorsement of this opportunity to enhance the home. So that's basically our story on the home, and we're looking forward to your review and approval of this opportunity.
Excellent, thank you. Is there anything that you want to answer?
Yes, so hi, my name is Nick Mercer. I work for Career Cloud Architects. I'm representing Darren and Christy on the architecture side of things. So to start, I would like to thank the city staff and zoning board members for their time and consideration with our variance request. And thank you, Mr. Murphy, for introducing the project to those that are in attendance. I have put together a brief presentation of the project, so I'm just going to share my screen really quick. Oh, I cannot share my screen.
Be able to now.
Can everyone see this?
Not yet.
Okay, so as you can see on the screen that you are looking at, we have a site plan here.
You haven't shared your screen yet, sir.
I have not.
You have not.
Have I now?
There we go. Yes, sir.
Sorry about that. So as I was saying, as you can see from the site plan shown on the screen, we are examining ways to modify the existing footprint to accommodate modern day spatial requirements, particularly in the family room, which is located on the west side of the house, which is where we are requesting the variance, which is the blue shaded area with the 2 next to it. It became apparent after we started examining ways to expand this area that the irregular shape of the lot and the corner lot conditions of the site create a very small building envelope, which is evident on the site plan. It's a very triangular shaped lot with very deep setbacks on both Northwood Boulevard and Woodland Avenue. On the next slide now, in fact, the existing footprint of the house, as you can see, encroaches into the existing setbacks, which means any sort of expansion that would need to be done to the footprint of the house would require a variance and as for a non-conforming use. The extra space that we are seeking a variance for is highlighted in this room under the yellow shading here. We carefully explored other options to ensure we are sensitive to the home's existing character, as well as the surrounding neighborhood, and that's evident in the support that Darren and Christy received from their neighbors. The proposed design achieves the goals of the project while minimizing the variance needs. And in summary, we believe that the practical difficulties of the site, including the irregular lot shape, the bags, allow us to request this variance. We may answer any additional questions you have at this time, and I thank you for your consideration in our request.
Excellent. And can you stop the screen sharing, please?
Yep.
Thank you, sir. All right, any questions for the petitioners at this point? Ms. Zukin.
Mr. Sapella, you said that you got approval from your two neighbors. Which ones are you referring to? Because you're on a corner, so are you
Yes, so we talked to our one neighbor on Woodland, as well as our two neighbors on Northwood.
okay, so the Woodland one is behind you?
Behind the garage, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, right there. And then our two neighbors on the other side of Northwood.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the Mr. Olfak?
Yeah, what hardships are there in not using the house as it's already there, useful, and needing more room for stuff is not a hardship. Please keep that in mind. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because at least one of your neighbors from across the street sent a letter against this, especially stating about the balconies. And so I want to see what the hardship is of having the need for a balcony and having the need to do these expansions.
The need is to just continue on with the livable space here and making it continuous and consistent with what the house currently has, and just carrying on that theme as we expand the upstairs area.
So you can't use the house as it is currently?
No, we definitely can use the house as is, but we're looking at to make it more useful and more comforting, and in the name, you know, being more livable for us in the home. The house on the outside effectively looks decent, but when you get inside, having lived here for a few months, it's quite tight. It's small, so you can see the elevation looks quite impressive actually, but once you get inside, and the architects could probably express the challenge they had trying to make the space more livable in all regards. So that's what we're really looking for, a more livable, comforting space.
All right, but the hardships of the balcony, what's the requirement that you need to have a balcony?
It'd be a desire to have it for sure, to be continuing on with the character and the look of the home that it currently has had for several years, and be a continuation of that look and that feel.
Right, but I mean, like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to.
Sorry.
We have to vote based upon hardships. You already have
right
the front. What's the need? What's the hardship that causes you to have it on the west side, the new balcony?
Darren, I can step in here really quick. So the existing balcony on the house is currently on the west side of the house. It makes most logical sense there because of the location of the second floor layout. Expanding it towards the west side of the house makes the most sense because of that layout of the second floor, and the need for the balcony. It's because there's already one there. We believe that since we're getting rid of the existing one, we have the right to put a new one in place to make up for that loss.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
If I just chime in, just to remind the board that we're looking at practical difficulties. Thank you.
All right. And again, before I go any further, gentlemen, as I stated earlier, we are down to 7 members. You're going to need 5 affirmative votes. Would you like us to move forward, or we can wait until next month, which obviously Mr. Clapp will still have to recuse himself, but we will quite possibly have 8 members, at which point we need 5 out of 8. It's completely up to the 2 of you.
I would like to move ahead.
All right, you got it. Ms. Robinson, did I see your hand? Okay. All right, well, we are back on this side of the table, if you will. Mr. Gavin.
I'll make a motion to approve the variances as requested.
We have a motion by Mr. Gavin. And I think I saw Ms. George's hand first, so we have a second by Ms. George. Mr. Gavin.
I think the practical difficulty here is the odd shape of this lot. It's with it being a corner lot and with the severe angle there, it makes it rather difficult, to do much of anything with it. There is a balcony there already, and I really like that they're trying to maintain the look of the house because it is a very unique old house. And maintaining that appearance, I think, is rather a nice touch. So with the severe angle and the odd shape of the lot, I think there is sufficient practical difficulty here for the variances to move forward.
Ms. George, any follow-up comments?
Just in addition, I've gone by this house. I live near it, and it is a practical difficulty, I feel like, in the shape of this lot. I don't know how they would expand their square footage without running into some sort of need for a variance. So it makes sense to me that this is granted. It seems like they're doing it responsibly in order to stay in the area they really want to be in.
All right, any other comments? Mr. Rolfak, then Ms. Zukin.
Although I appreciate the design, I appreciate the thought that went into it. I don't have a problem with altering or expanding non-conforming structure. I do have a little bit of heartburn expanding more of that front yard setback that it's already encroached upon, as well as yes, they are taking down the balcony and moving it forward. But the problem is once you redesign the stuff, now if we're trying to be in letter with practical difficulties, this house is able to be used as it is right now. It's only being expanded for stuff's sake, not for. So because of that, I have a hard time supporting this variance as requested.
And did I have Ms. Zukin next?
Yep. I don't have a problem with expanding the living space, but I do have a problem with the balcony because it is a non-conforming use now. And if you're taking it down, I don't think it's within the spirit of the ordinance to build a new one. And there are complaints by neighbors concerned about people looking down into their bedrooms. So I have to respect those requests. So although I'd go along with B, I don't think I can go along with C.
Ms. Robinson.
I don't have a with the other sizes of homes in the neighborhood. I also don't have a problem with the balcony because I think it fits with the architecture of the house and the neighborhood.
Alrighty, and I'll be supporting the motion as presented. With the odd triangular shape of the lot, them being forced to hold setbacks, two front yard setbacks, I think creates a practical difficulty where if they had a standard rectangular shaped lot that they wouldn't be being held to. And quite frankly, if they did no improvements whatsoever on the balcony as it sits, then we would just be looking at an unimproved balcony with no way to compel them to take it down or improve it. So to penalize them for that, I don't think is reasonable by this board. So I can support the motion as presented. Is there any other comments? Mr. Moore.
I was really on the fence on this one, but the balcony is the thing I have the issue with, and the neighbors have written about the balcony, but there's a balcony there now, and so I don't believe that it's making the conditions any worse than it is now. So I'll support the motion as well.
Well, and I read those comments also, and quite frankly, any house with a second story, you can stand in your window and look out the window, and if the neighbor next door has their shades open, you're going to see what you're going to see. on a balcony or out of a window. So that argument, quite frankly, doesn't carry a whole lot of weight with me on that argument. All right, not seeing any other comments, and I will go ahead and call for the roll call vote. I vote yes. Ms. George?
Yes.
Mr. Gavin?
Yes.
Mr. Muller?
Yes.
Ms. Zukin?
No.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
And Mr. Opek?
No.
All right, so it looks like the motion does pass successfully 5-2. You gentlemen are all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
All righty, have a great night.
Everyone, appreciate it.
All right, and that brings us down to our final item of new business, case number E6, which is case number 210210, public hearing on the appeal of Julie and John Farhat, petitioner and owners for the following variances. A, waive the prohibition of a combination of utilities in the garage accessory structure which create living space. B, a use variance to convert the second story of a detached garage to habitable living space and create a second dwelling unit located at 2209 Vincenta Boulevard. Mr. Murphy.
This is an island property. It has frontage along 3 streets, Vincenta, Murdoch, and Lloyd. And some of the board members may recall that in 2017, the petitioner was in front of you for a host of variances in order to construct the single-family home that you see in the aerial photograph and the detached garage. The garage is taller in height than allowed under the ordinance, and that's the result of a variance request that was granted in 2017. The garage itself maintains a basement, the ground floor, and a second story for storage. And that second story and the basement are accessed via an internal staircase. The ground floor is accessed via overhead doors for the vehicles, and there's a side entry man door. We'll go ahead and look at the photograph from the street to give you a better perspective. Again, the garage is detached from a home. They are very close, and they are connected in essence by a covered walkway, but not connected living space. There is a side entry door that is located underneath that covered walkway. We did note some items, that the utilities and some circumstances in the report which the petitioner has corrected us, and so I'll note that just the ground floor or the first floor of the garage is insulated. The basement and the upper storage, the second floor of the storage area, they're not insulated. And the structure has an electric heat and cooling system. It does not have natural gas. That was my mistake based on a prior building permit that perhaps never was issued. And the structure has sewer connection, and that is related to a sump pump that the property owner has in the basement of the detached garage. That sump pump connects to the sewer lead. It does not have water. The petitioner is proposing to add water service to the garage so that they may have, and I'll refer to the floor plan, so that they may install a bathroom with a toilet and a sink, as well as a countertops and a kitchen sink-like setting, along with a refrigerator and an ice maker. The remainder of the floor area is dedicated to what they refer to as an office or a classroom setting. There are some zoning ordinance provisions that prohibit an accessory structure, a detached garage, from containing a combination of utilities, which would make it easily convertible to living space or habitable space. The existing utilities plus the proposed utility adding water to this detached garage, it does create a separate living space independent of the existing single-family home that's on the site. The zoning ordinance defines a dwelling as a building or a portion of a building which is used to reside or contains no less than a kitchen, a bathroom, and a bedroom/living area. Staff holds that the petitioner's floor plan as it illustrates all of those components, and the second story has the ability to function as a separate dwelling unit. The site is located in the one-family residential zoning district, which only allows for one dwelling unit, which is the single-family home that's there. By adding these additional utilities and the floor space as labeled, it could very well be used as a separate dwelling unit. So the petitioner is seeking a variance to waive that strict prohibition of a combination of utilities to a detached garage. If the board grants this variance request, the petitioner will be able to utilize the space for its identified use, which you can see on the floor plan as an office/classroom. The petitioner would not be able to utilize it as a separate dwelling unit unless the board grants a use variance in order to recognize it as a separate second dwelling unit. We did receive 6 written public comments that are included in the online report. We did not receive any audio public comment for tonight's meeting, and I'd be able to answer any questions that the board might have on the petitioner's proposal.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy at this point? All right, not seeing any. I see the fire hats are present. The floor is yours.
Hi there, Julie Farhead here, my husband, John. We currently live at 2209 Vincetta. We moved in last February, a month before the world shut down. And as Mr. Murphy mentioned, we were before you about a year ago requesting some, or a couple years ago rather, requesting some other variances related to the build out of our home. But what we could have never have anticipated was COVID. And I think no one could have anticipated that and the burdens that come with that. We have 4 small children, ages 1, 4, 6, and 8. They've been out of school since March. Our oldest daughters go to Northwood. And I've been homeschooling them to the best that I can, and while still caring for the other children. And while having John at home more than usual, trying to do as much office work from home. And it's pretty much sheer pandemonium over here 24/7. I know I'm not the only one that is impacted by COVID in this way, but we are in a unique position that we have in a garage attic that is currently pretty underutilized. And so we are here before you asking for permission to finish out that space and use it as a satellite office, an extension to our home, a satellite office that would serve both to give my husband and I back an office space. Right now we're in our office. It's filled with kids stuff, Valentine's, everything else related to school this week. And we're looking to create a more quiet classroom space where we can conduct adult business and where we can also have the children go on times where they might need a more quiet environment. Our home office is right off the kitchen, and that's where everyone wants to be. That's where the young children are at my feet, screaming, fighting. And it's right outside where our current home office is located, as you can see in the drawings. And so we're looking to build out a second office space, and we believe that we are applying for one variance to add that second utility, which is water, the only utility we would need to finish out the space as proposed, to go ahead and add a half bathroom and add a small beverage center. I do not believe what we're proposing is in fact a kitchen or even a kitchenette or a small kitchen. It does not contain any cooking facilities, not an electric range, not a cooktop, not even a microwave. There's nothing beyond a mini fridge. There's no dishwasher. And I would like to also add that the powder room as proposed does not meet the definition of a bathroom. A bathroom is not defined in the building code here from what I can see, but if I go ahead and use the Oxford dictionary, it is clearly defined as something that contains a bathtub or a shower, something that would in turn make this a more habitable space, which is not what we're proposing. Similarly, like I mentioned, the kitchen, the beverage center, which you're calling a kitchenette, could never be used as a full kitchen. It could never be used to even
For
house.
anyone to live.
Yeah, even we're not talking about using this as an apartment, and we're not even talking about using this as a living space, not to have our teenager come live there, not to have friends and family stay here. It's completely open concept. There's no bedroom, there's no doors. It's wide open when you walk up there, with the exception of the lav, which is, a nice thing to have when you're going to be spending some time there trying to work for anything that resembles a full work day. So that's what we're proposing for the space. And I do believe that we are facing an undeniable hardship right now because of COVID. This is, this situation impacts all aspects of our lives and your lives as well. And so we are being asked to educate our kids now, which was not something we planned on doing in the home, while keeping the family running and keeping our businesses running. And so we are in a different situation than when we were building out our home originally. So I did include a letter. I believe John forwarded along a letter. I don't want to go through and read all 3 pages, although I'm happy to, but I do have some public policy experience. I worked as a chemical engineer for the EPA, and we crafted motor vehicle and fuel regulations. And one of the things that our rules had to include were hardship provisions for all the things, not just for small businesses that might need additional lead time, but for things that you could never have anticipated, like natural disasters, or in this case, a pandemic. We had to have our rules be able to flex for these scenarios that we never anticipated. And I do believe that we are in that situation right now. And as of right now, there's not an end in sight. We don't really know when our kids are going back to school, and we don't know even when they go back, how long they're going to be back in school with the new variants and the slow rollout of the vaccine. So we're looking to create a satellite office space that can function for our family of 6, because right now our home office is not really equipped to do that. And our kids are young, so you can't really send a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old to their bedrooms and tell them to go to work. They don't have the organizational skills, and they certainly don't have the test taking skills. Both kids have had to complete 8 hours of standardized testing this year from home. That's not something we can really send them to their bedrooms to do at this point. And maybe in a few years we'll be there, but we're just not there yet. And so I think the time is now to do something and to take this underutilized space and make it an extension of our home. And like you mentioned, we are not talking about using this as an apartment. That would require something separate. We do not even believe it meets the definition of a second dwelling, let alone something that we would have a second use for, like something we would rent out.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner at this point? Mr. Ofac?
Well, I appreciate that you have hardships, sort of like my own family, where we have 2 kids, one of them being 9, who we send to his bedroom for his schooling. And I have a house that's a quarter the size of yours. How is yours? You're bringing up hardships, but how is that different than everyone else who has already commented on your situation? Why you can't use some other space within your house to do that which you want to do? Because right now I can't see this other being a hardship that everyone else has, that everyone else is dealing with.
I certainly have not had a chance to read through those comments. I haven't received them or had a chance to read through them to really know what you're talking about. I'm not saying that we are in any less of a hardship situation than you. I'm simply saying that we are in a unique position, that we have a garage that's already built out, and we are talking about using a space that's already there to extend our office space. And so we are in a position to be able to take action. And so now we want to take action and utilize that space as an office versus a storage area filled with Christmas presents, blueprints, building materials. It has a better use right now that could be used for educating our children for time to come, or just working from home for as long as possible. I think when COVID's over, I think people are going to work from home a lot more because we can, and we've learned that we can. And so to have a space that could be used for that, that's right here, 7 feet from our house, I don't know why we wouldn't want to utilize that, being in the position that we have the space.
Anything else, Mr. Ofac?
Well, yeah, just to follow up on that, I understand that. The only thing I would say is, if we grant this allows that space to have a powder room, which, being a real estate, you know what the definition of a bathroom is, and a half bathroom is a toilet and a sink. it grants a sink, granted not a kitchen because there's not a electric stove there, but it grants a space that one person, future seller, could put a kitchen in there and turn that into a livable space, which is why I think the planning department has flagged it about that. And I understand your feelings on that, but what's the hardship of why you need to have that powder room up there? Why someone can't just walk to the house? Why do you need to have a sink up there?
So if I could just comment, if we were making decisions today based on what a future owner could modify, I think that's kind of an unfair way to look at it. If we're proposing a certain project, to think what somebody could convert it to in the future, I feel like is a stretch. That being said, the reason for the bathroom in the small beverage center was put in because I spend time, at least I try to spend time at the house working. Our kids, I don't know, obviously you have kids, you would know, kids use the bathroom often. So if we're sending them next door into the garage to do some work or to take a test, every time they come back inside the house, it's a distraction. I think what, kind of commenting back on your question about the square footage, we are not here to tell you that we are lacking square footage in our home. That is not the case. What we're telling you is that the fact that our office, the only office we have in our home, is currently taken over by our 2 children, and it doesn't allow a space for my wife and I to work. That being said, it's also right off of a kitchen that a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old are completely attached to all day. So I get the space is not really our concern. So if we're looking at it as a square footage standpoint, I totally understand that. It's more having a separate space from the house itself that is undistracted. The powder room, the beverage center, to me, does not make it a separate dwelling. Mr. Murphy and I went back and forth a little bit through email, and whether he wants to comment on this or not is up to him. But I read the dwelling definition pretty clearly, and I don't believe that without a shower, a bathtub, or any cooking facilities, if Mr. Murphy wants to read what the definition of a dwelling is according to the city of Royal Oak, it's pretty clear that we don't meet those standards. So I don't want to debate the language of dwelling, but it's confusing to us, or what the reason behind the city thinking we would want it as a second dwelling versus an extension of our current dwelling.
And let me move over to Ms. George. I believe I saw her hand.
I just wanted to make sure I'm clear that what you're asking is to add the water utility, but you're not actually trying to build anything additional structurally. Is that correct?
That is correct. So from the exterior, there are absolutely no changes.
Got it.
The interior is completely framed out. There is already electricity. The first floor of the garage is completely finished with drywall trim paint. It's as finished as your living room is. That is completely approved, and that all went through the city. What we're trying to do is basically finish the second floor, and the only utility needed is water. Water is 7 feet from the garage in our house. I've already verified with the head of the plumbing department that no additional water lead is needed from the street. It would literally be tapped 7 feet away from the house. So the sewer exists because of the sump. The electricity, obviously it exists, and that's what our heating and cooling is based on. So literally the only utility that we're proposing would be that addition of the water.
Got it.
Any other questions for the petitioners at this point? All right, not seeing any, I will go ahead and bring it back to this side of the table.
Could I just say one more thing? If there are no other questions, to the point that was made about why is this situation, any different than anyone else's? I recognize that we might be one of the first parties here seeking hardship relief due to COVID, but I think that everyone in this room or on this planet cannot deny that we are facing a COVID hardship. It will be the biggest hardship we probably ever faced in our lifetime. And I think that maybe we might be the first ones to come here and say, hey, this is a real hardship and we are trying to do something to make this more manageable. I'm not saying that others could not come before you and make a similar claim, but there's no doubt that this is a hardship. And as I sat and listened to some of the other cases asking for different relaxations of the standards, I believe that we present a very compelling case as to why we are facing a hardship, which is part of your regulations, which allow your regulations to live and breathe and flex. And I do believe that these regulations were meant to be interpreted. Some of these are more detailed than others, and the fact that you know, even just some of these building regulations weren't called out to define all these things. They were meant for us people to come before you and ask for this interpretation. And I do believe we're just asking to add the one utility, water, to make it a more livable office space where people could spend more than an hour there to try to work. And I do not believe it meets the definition of a dwelling whatsoever based on the definition of a kitchen and bathroom. So I just want to reiterate that even, you know, I do believe that we are in a hardship situation right now. Even though we have a nice new home, this is definitely the definition of a hardship. The ability to work, learn, and do everything in one home. We're all facing this situation right now.
Thank you very much. All right, well, I'm going to bring it back to this side of the table, and I saw Mr. Olfak's hand.
No, actually, I just thought of a question to ask them since they just brought up that they stated that right now they can't let their kids go and be in their bedrooms to do the studying. So why would they be then in this space with that's even farther away than their bedrooms to do studying?
Great question.
Actually, you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. I mean, we're really talking about some regulations by the city, and I don't want this to skew to the personal. How and where you raise your kids and where you send them to study, that's none of our business.
No, I would actually like the opportunity to answer that question if I may. We are talking about an adult, one or the two of us, when we have access to childcare or when John is not going into his home office, so he's not his Keller Williams office, he might be working in that office. So if a child needed to go complete NWEA testing for the third time this year, which is a 2+ hour test, we could say, go take your laptop up to the office in the garage and daddy will help you. And it's a nice quiet workspace, which is not the same that could be said for our home office, which is literally right off the kitchen, the half bath that the kids use to, you know, during the day, run around. One of our 4-year-olds still needs help in the bathroom. It's literally right outside the home office. And anyone who knows when you're working with children, they're loud. They're screaming and running around and playing tag, almost rubbing it in their sisters' faces that they're in school and they're not. I mean, it's insanity. These conditions that we're all living in are not conducive for learning or for working. And we are in this unique position to be able to extend our living space 7 feet next door. And so we're just looking for permission to be able to do that.
Thank you for the explanation. It helps.
Mr. Moore.
I believe my question is probably for Mr. Murphy on this. I know the neighbors in the area seem to be concerned about a potential future Airbnb situation in this space. And does the city have any other mechanism, I guess, for flagging a Airbnb rental situation besides a lack of utilities in a space? Like, is there something that would, like a rental licensing or something else that would prevent this from being rented out as a short-term nightly rental kind of a situation in the future?
Well, the board has the opportunity to, if the board has no objection to the petitioner's proposed use as shown on the floor plan as their use, for their use, you do have the ability to grant the first variance request, which is to allow for the combination of utilities to the detached garage. If the board is not comfortable with recognizing it as a separate dwelling unit, which could be rented on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, to an in-law, to whoever, you have the ability to deny the second variance request, which is a use variance. So in denying the use variance, there would be no question that the city would be able to enforce this exact floor plan and the petitioner's expressed use of the space. If it started to be used as a dwelling unit, complaints from code enforcement, and the code enforcement division went out and did find that it was an Airbnb or it was being rented to a relative or someone else on a regular basis, and the board had not granted the use variance request, the city would be able to take very effective code enforcement action against them. But if you grant the use variance, they would be allowed to rent it out to whomever at whatever time frame.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
So I guess Mr. Murphy's gonna have to clarify to me, because I'm confused why number 2 is even being discussed if it has nothing to do with us being able to finish the space as proposed. We've never proposed to do anything with it other than that. So am I misunderstanding Mr. Murphy when you're saying that you could approve A, deny B, and it wouldn't change anything about what we're proposing to finish? The only change would be that we wouldn't be able to rent it out in the future?
It would be that the zoning board of appeals didn't recognize it as a separate dwelling unit that you would be able to rent out in the future. They would recognize it exactly as you've illustrated, which is a home office or a classroom setting.
So could we just propose to drop B and not even have further discussion on it? I guess
We don't think it meets the definition of B, and
we're-
people are concerned that if it did meet the definition of B, that we would rent it out, which would never
Yes.
happen.
And I have no problem, whatever legally needs to happen with the city to make sure that we are not allowed to rent it out. I don't have a problem signing something to that degree if that's the concern of the board.
All right, excellent.
You have the opportunity to withdraw the variance request B. Sure.
So I just want to make
Let's
sure
do that.
if we withdraw it, as proposed, the finish would not change. It would only change what the space could be used for.
Perfect.
Then I don't see any reason we wouldn't withdraw B.
And you're good with that, Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I am officially going to bring it back to this side of the board. Mr. Moore.
I'll make a motion to approve, looks like letter A then.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Moore, and I see a second by Mr. Ofac. Mr. Moore.
Mr. Esper, if I could just cut in for a moment, if you
Please.
wanted to ask the petitioners to make sure they wanted to.
Oh, yes, I did forget. We are down to board members, you've heard me mention a few times this evening,
Okay.
so
We're good.
do you want us to move forward?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Kaluzny, I appreciate that. All right, where was I? I was going back to Mr. Moore.
Yes, my only concern was the use variance, and that's been taken care of now. So I've said everything else. Thanks.
Mr. Ofac?
Yep, that was my concern too. And with removing that use variance, I don't have a problem with, because heck, even if he wanted to use it in the garage to wash off hands doing stuff on the car or whatnot, I could totally understand wanting to have water in the garage area. So I have no problem granting that first portion.
Okay. I cannot support this motion, and going back as far as Mayor Cowan, I remember discussions at the table. The city's been very firm on this, and the elected bodies throughout the year have been very firm on this. This discussion has come up numerous times in the last 20 years about multiple utilities in an accessory dwelling, and the city has always frowned on it, as have our elected officials, for the very reasons described. Now, I understand that by eliminating B, it technically puts the city in an enforcement issue, but that's also the same problem that we are now putting the city in an enforcement issue situation if somebody, for whatever reasons, decides that they want to bend the rules. I'm not suggesting the Farhats would do that, but there's a slippery slope that is being approached when you allow for the second utility to go in place. And thereby, like I've said, for as long as I've been following politics and policy here in Royal Oak, it has been very, very firm that there will not be a mix of utilities in any accessory structure for that very reason, so the city does not have to start playing the code enforcement game. So for that reason, I very simply cannot support this. Are there any other comments? Ms. Zukin.
I agree with you. There's a prohibition against a combination of utilities in a garage. In order to get a variance, you've got to show practical difficulties, and I just don't see it here.
Mr. Gavin.
Yeah, I agree with Clyde and Deb. It's just, I'm very torn on this one, but ultimately for me, it's coming down to the fact that I just don't see a practical difficulty here. COVID is a horrible situation, but you know, eventually schools will open back up. It's a temporary situation, and the changes that we enforce and allow here in the zoning board are permanent changes that will run with the property and stay with the property. And so that's where I'm coming. That's my sticking point. So
All right, any other comments? Mr. Opak?
Thank you, Clyde, for enlightening me. I did not know about that prohibition. Your planning experience on the planning board probably helped with that. Because of that, I will be switching and not supporting this as suggested.
All right, well, the floor is over here, Mr. Farhat. So procedurally, as you have withdrawn your support of the motion, we have a motion from Mr. Moore at this point that is now unsupported. Does anybody else wish to support his motion? Ms. George? Any comments that you would like to make on that?
Yeah, I'll support it. I don't think it makes sense to prohibit them from building out and creating the home they want just because there's a lot of square footage there already. I think since they were allowed to build the garage to the point that it is now, I don't see the real justice being served in not allowing them the extra utility of water and being able to utilize their space that they built in the way they want. I know we're not talking about a use variance anymore, but I'm just saying to continue to develop their home in the manner that they'd like to. I don't fully see why prohibiting that makes sense. And additionally, all the complaints that I read were about them renting this out as an Airbnb, and you're not doing that with 4 little children, so that's not at all a concern of mine.
All right, any other comments from the board? All right, now, oh, Ms. Robinson. You're muted, Nancy.
Sorry about that. I was torn on this too. Part of me said, I was very much intrigued. The space is there, why not use it? I mean, that was kind of just my gut feeling. It's not infringing on anybody else as long as they weren't renting it out. I mean, obviously that was the big thing. And since that's taken off of here, now it's just they've got the space to have it here. Why can't they use it? And I understand at some point the city not wanting to have these extra apartments above garages. It's more for the reason that we don't want to have that density doubled up, that we're using it as not a single family lot and house, that now you're kind of adding this auxiliary apartment there. For that reason, I mean, yeah, they have a big house and I have a small house. Why don't they have more space? But that's not the issue here. It's why can't they use the space that they have? And for that reason, I'm supporting it.
Okay. All right, anybody else? All right, so the motion as it sits right now is to allow, hold on, let me go back here, to waive the prohibition on the combination of utilities in the garage or an accessory structure which create a living space. And I will start at the bottom, which is me. I vote no. Ms. George?
Yes.
Mr. Klatt?
Yes.
Mr. Gavin?
No.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Zukin?
No.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
And Mr. Opak?
No.
All right, so we are at a 4-4 deadlock. So a motion does not pass with a tie. Procedurally, do you want a motion in the alternative?
Please.
Mr. Opak?
I move to deny the variances as requested.
We have a motion by Mr. Opak. And a second from Ms. Zukin. Any follow-up comments to your motion, Mr. Opak?
Yes, I know we just ended in a 4-4 tie, and more likely than not, someone doesn't want to switch from one side to another, but we know that procedurally we want one direction or another. So hopefully someone will realize that since there's not enough for the variance, one of those 4s will switch over to the non-4s. One thing that I would like to suggest as to, I understand now about another reason why the water is not going to hamper them from using that space if they wanted to as an office. It would just hamper the fact that they wouldn't be able to use a powder room or a sink. could still use that space for an office. And when restrooms are needed, they would just have to go to the house.
And I think it was Ms. Zukin who had a second. Do you have any comments, ma'am?
Nothing further.
Okay. All right, so now we have a motion on the floor to deny the request. And I'll start in the other direction. Mr. Ofac?
Aye.
Ms. Robinson?
No.
Ms. Zukin?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
No.
Mr. Gavin?
Aye.
Mr. Clapp?
No.
Ms. George?
No.
And I vote yes. So that motion does carry. Mr. Murphy?
No, I have 4-4.
All right, so a 4-4 deadlock in both directions. Procedurally, what's our move?
Nothing. The variance request, any variance request, non-use variance request requires a minimum of 5 affirmative votes for approval. The board did take action, and the petitioner did not obtain the necessary variance requests to obtain approval. So the proposal is simply not approved as shown or as requested.
All right, very good. Thank you, sir.
Could I ask just one procedural question?
Sure.
If we were to eliminate water, is that the concern that people have? And if so, Joseph, maybe you would be able to answer this. Would I be allowed to finish the space above my garage exactly as proposed if I just removed the water, or would that still require a variance? And if so, would the board reconsider if we took the water out?
I think some of those might be questions for a different day.
I'm just wondering, are we going to have to come in front again if we say, okay, we'll take the water out? Is that going to, are we going to be back in front of you next month again? I just want to know kind of what I'm expecting.
Well, procedurally, the board did not grant the variance request. You're unable to come back for the same variance requests within a year. So if you have a different proposal in mind, we'd be happy to work with you on the side during regular office hours to see what you might be able to accomplish without necessitating a variance.
Could I ask a rather silly question, since this is a rather divided group? I just have a.
Well, as a matter of fact, man, we have more on our agenda that we need to take care of this evening. So I would recommend that you call Mr. Murphy's office tomorrow and you can hash these issues out with him. And then if you come in front of this board again, we can certainly hear your case at that point in time.
No, excuse me, I just had one question about the enforcement side of things, since you mentioned that the city has taken a firm stance in the past, which probably precedes my years of home ownership here in the city, of really paying attention to this sort of thing. And I just have a question in terms of how we use history to kind of inform the future. Absolutely, we understand we take a firm stance, but if the concerns are about the use and having to go catch people living in these garage spaces, someone has an uncle that lives up there, is there anything that we could do potentially, a unique solution that says, hey, I don't know if anyone would really ever want to do this. Can we invite code enforcement over once a month for coffee that will fill with the water tap to come see that the space is being used by our family and our children? Invite them over. I don't know anyone that else would be willing to say, come on over to see our place. We have nothing to hide here. We're coming before you to finish our space. Does that help with the code enforcement burden to say, come on over anytime you want? And guess what? You can avoid knocking on our front door and waking up the kids up from nap. Come on into the garage space and you can come see what it's being used for. I mean, that's how clear I am that we have nothing to hide. I'm not saying that people in the past didn't have good intentions for spaces above the garage, but it seems like we're responding for the future by all the ways in which people might break the rules versus looking at people who are simply trying to follow the rules, which is why we're here today.
Well, I will answer your question this way.
Okay.
It is not the purview of this body to give you advice in terms of how you should deal with code enforcement and inviting to your house to prove that you're saying that you're doing what you're saying. But if you don't like the prohibition that the city currently has in place, we have 7 elected officials that are elected every 2 years. I would recommend that you start sending them emails and see if you can lobby them to reconsider the ordinance as it is written. And that would be the direction that you would go if you want an ordinance change. It is not this purview, the purview of this body to make that move. We simply enforce ordinances that are in place.
Oh no, I'm not supportive of the ordinance, but I do believe that the body here before us was meant to interpret this on a case-by-case basis. And so we're saying, here's the case today, which is we're all home and working from home and schooling from home, many of us. And this is the case we're in right now, and this is the current hardship. So we're asking for you to look at today, not necessarily just look at history as a precedent, is what I'm saying.
All right, all right. I understand your frustration, ma'am. I am going to cut you off, and I'm going to ask Ms. Schwanger to remove you from the meeting so that we can move forward with our agenda. I'm sorry that you're unhappy, but have a great night, both of you. Thank you. All right, moving right along. Where are we? Okay, other business, election of officers.
I move that they stay. I move that they stay
I'm all
the
frazzled
same.
now.
I move that they stay the same.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Gavin, and we have a second I see from Mr. Klatt. Any discussion on this motion? All right, not seeing any, I will do the roll call vote. Mr. Opak?
Aye.
Ms. Robinson?
Aye.
Ms. Zukin?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Gavin?
Yes.
Mr. Klatt?
Yes.
Ms. George?
Yep.
Oh, there you are. I couldn't see you on the screen. And I vote yes. So that is all set. And then the only thing
Can I
we
just
have,
can I just make sure everybody knows who both officers were, since we have some new members? I don't know if that was clear.
well, I guess that is true. So I am currently the chair and Anthony is currently the vice chair.
I just want to make sure, because I don't know if
you're completely right. I mean, that was just,
especially if we have new members.
I was going to make a motion to make Ryan chair, but I'm not sure that would fly.
No.
All right, so with that being all set, that moves us along to the second item of other business I just want to bring up. We all got an email this week about training seminars. Anybody who's newer to this board who has not taken any training, or if you happen to be free that night, I would highly recommend it. It really, I've sat through a number of training seminars with a couple of the people on this board, and really getting a perspective, not just as we rule on cases in Royal Oak, but how do they deal with things in Milford versus Oxford versus Novi? You really get a bigger picture perspective. And so I certainly do highly recommend it for anybody who's never taken any training, or if you have taken training, take some more. Mr. Moore.
I'll go a little step further and suggest that if you can look at those over this weekend and let me know by midday Monday, because several of the training sessions that are available to board members start fairly soon. So I do need to call the Michigan Planning Association and ask them to register a variety of people. Had several individuals from this board as well as the Planning Commission ask for registration. So I'd like to accomplish that early next week if I can.
Okay, we have our marching orders.
Joseph, I didn't get an email. I don't believe I was included. If you could just include me so I could take a look at the dates.
Sure, no problem. And we'll take care of the registration as well as the registration fee for anyone interested.
And thank you for offering.
And I would second what Clyde said. They are extremely helpful. And I've taken several, and I'm going to take another one because it always helps to have a refresher. And it does give you a good perspective on what our role really is here.
I think Mr. Morse was waiting for a while. Go ahead, sir.
That's all right. I just wanted to make sure I was looking at the right thing, because I clicked on the link and it looked like some of them started in the beginning of the first week of February, and it was like a continuous course over a couple of different weeks. Is that the case, or is that just how one of them works?
Just how one of them works. Yes,
Okay.
There are several others, and you can look at one that might be more applicable or more appealing to you. Some of them are a little more intense in that they're 2-day efforts, but hopefully that won't be overly burdensome, time consuming for you.
Sure, I'll look at it again this weekend. Thank you.
All right, anything else for the good of the body? All right, I'm looking for the mystery motion. We have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Moore and a second by Mr. Gavin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, good night, everybody.
All right.
Good night.
See you next month.
Good night, guys.